Chapter 640. Drowning will be your fate. As Barnes continued to use the power of the spirit of speech, ripples suddenly appeared around Rufo, who was trapped in the darkness and screaming. Ripples suddenly appeared around all the monks of Eckwart, as well as the believers and priests of the other gods present. Except for a few priests of the gods who could breathe underwater, or some strange races, most of the people involuntarily grabbed their throats, but the water still gushed into their mouths and noses. For the glory of Les Avit, gurgle gurgle, I will kill you today. In his agitation, Rufo, who had been transformed into a divine creature, digested the blood of the gods in his body even more thoroughly. He tried his best to mobilize the divine power of changing reality, and broke through the shackles of darkness. After Rufo overcame this obstacle, the strong wind brought about by his rapid movement helped him. The water around him was bounced away by the wind pressure. This old warrior monk and young divine creature had used his actions to express his position. Like a bullet fired from a gun, Rufo was filled with fanatical belief in the gods and the zeal for revenge. He rushed straight to where Barnes was. The path you have chosen is full of thorns. Barnes had no intention of dodging, nor did he ask others to help him. Facing the attacker who was close at hand, Barnes simply raised the lamp-burning staff in his hand and thrust it forward. Countless gravel and vines appeared out of thin air in an instant, completely blocking Rufo's path forward. However, his lamp-burning staff seemed to be unrestrained as it pierced into his opponent's body. Bang! With a muffled sound, as if he had been hit by a battering ram, Rufo's limbs were suspended in the air, and his body was thrown backward at a speed not much slower than when he had rushed over. It was quite obvious that Barnes was a rare tiefling with a unique devil bloodline. His withered body contained power that couldn't be underestimated. Since you are so stubborn and unrepentant, the president of the Gods Association of Gods only took a small step forward, but he appeared directly in front of Rufo, who had fallen to the ground. Then I will deprive you of your power. Let's see how much of your pitiful loyalty is left after losing the flesh and bones given by the false god. A gift from a false god. Everything is fake. Unlike before, when it came to the gods, even though Tynes was very skillful, his voice still sounded strained. As a result, he had no choice but to use the power contained in the lamp-burning stick to recite the entire hymn. The cage that had been in an extinguished state at the end of the stick suddenly shone. The small half of the candle, which was dark and made of an unknown material, suddenly lit up on its own, emitting a foul light. Chi-chi-chi, the moment he smashed Rufo's face with the burning wand, a continuous burning sound naturally rang out. Every drop of wax that dripped from the cage would turn into a black shadow that quickly drilled into the body of the divine creature below. During this process, Rufo's body seemed to have been electrified. He kept twitching and shaking nonstop. The smell of the sticks, and a fishy smell similar to river mud. Keyes wrinkled his nose and could not help but frown. Because he had once relied on quantum energy to soak in the water of the sticks, the smell that drifted from Rufo and Tynes was somewhat familiar to him. Soon, he had some speculations, as if to confirm the young bluegill's judgment, or as if Tynes deliberately wanted to establish his prestige. The president of the Gods Association calmly said to everyone present, "Take a look, take a look. The hypocritical gods have been stripped of their mysterious veil. When that kind of illusory power can no longer be fake. Just by using the ointment made of the mud of the sticks, and sprinkling it, the armor that they gave to the foolishly loyal will be stripped off by me." When the words, "sticks sinks into the mud," reached his ears, thanks to his experience in the logistics department of Bader, Keyes immediately figured out the internal price of that stuff in the 9 prisons of Bader. It's really just... He could not help but twitch his mouth. It's really amazing to have a mine at home. The power of money is indeed the strongest superpower. However, the young blue dragon's unspoken criticism did not attract the attention of others. Those people were all shocked by the message conveyed by Tynes's word. The deities and non-members of the Church of Gods cheered. They were excited by the strength of their president and the success of the association in overthrowing the rule of the gods. On the other hand, the deities and non-enemies of the Church of Gods, the believers and priests who clamored to punish this blasphemous organization, were devastated. They could not understand how their divine power could be shattered by the tricks of mortals. And this was exactly what Tynes wanted. After today, he would release some enemies who dared to attack the association's headquarters. Those fellows were like seeds. What they saw today would bring chaos to the sect they belonged to. If the Gods Association could modulate the chaos, develop a nervous system and evolve a brain, then they might be able to set off a great riot against the gods that would sweep across the multiverse. But sometimes the idea was good, but there would always be some problems when it came to implementation. Just as Tynes was feeling complacent, a short figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It turned out that the guy was Skaven, who did not have much of a presence. Before Tynes could ask him what he wanted to do, the Rat King's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a flattering smile. "Mr. President, I want to." No one expected that Skaven would suddenly open his mouth and bite Tynes' arm with his yellow, decayed front teeth. "I want to borrow something from you." As expected, as an existence with the power of money, Tynes could be said to be covered with high-grade and even legendary enchanted defensive equipment. If it were not for the fact that his philosophy was different and he could not use divine artifacts, it would not be difficult for him to get 2 low-grade divine artifacts. But even with such protection, he still could not withstand Skaven's bite. Wherever the Rat King's teeth touched, whether it was magic, flesh, or armor, everything was as fragile as a piece of white paper. Crack! As Skaven's mouth closed completely, Tynes' arm holding the burning lamp staff was completely separated from his body. While Tynes teleported away due to the pain, Skaven immediately grabbed the broken arm and the burning lamp staff. "Thank you for your generosity." With a sarcastic remark, the Rat King disappeared directly from where he was. No one knew where he went. "Follow me." Vice President Lisa, who was standing next to Keys, opened a portal next to them. "Don't dawdle. If you're late, your lives will be." The explosion was even faster than the rumbling sound of Hellscream when it was launched. Chapter 641. Fear, heat, and crowding exerted too much pressure. Screams were heard from the houses. A gust of cold wind whistled from the peak of the Wuji Peak, followed by heavy storm clouds. Lightning danced between the clouds. The wind blew away the smoke and the stench of the corpses, and the torrential rain washed over the land. At dawn the next day, which was also the time when the veterans of Sigil City were used to calling it the peak hour, the broken temple seemed to have changed its appearance under the soft light. It was quiet, cool, and spotless. Corpse carriers went in and out of the broken temple area. According to the agreement between the Death Council and the Gods Association, the corpses of those who died last night had to be transported to the big morgue. 2 Cambion demon workers pulled a handcart together. On the cart were about 20 corpses. The meat of the corpses after the explosion could only be calculated in this way. "Hey, you know what? The president of the Gods Association went crazy yesterday," a Cambion demon whispered to his companion. "He actually ordered the use of Hellscream to flip a third of the broken temple. And since yesterday, many of the large teleportation portals in Sigil City have been taken over by the Gods Association. Their army has been withdrawing from the outer realms and the astral plane in batches." Hearing the gossip from his colleague, the other Cambion demon replied in a low voice, "Be careful with your words. I'm afraid that this time, the gods and non-gods will be in the same situation as the last time with the Doom Guardians. Both bosses are seriously injured. At this time, if any news reaches their ears, I'm afraid that before tomorrow, our names will be put on the assassination bounty list of Plunder Shimshaka by the Red-Eyed Association members." Because this was very reasonable, his colleague immediately nodded, indicating that he would not say anything more. There were too many broken stones and rubble inside the broken temple. Every time the handcart made a turn, it would make an annoying creaking sound. After walking for a while, the Cambion demon could not help but talk. Say, he looked around, the sudden disappearance of that curly hair yesterday, could it be related to… who knows? The other Cambion glanced at him. That guy used to have curly hair, but because he was addicted to gambling and drinking, he was shaved bald by his creditors. A guy like that who doesn't have a penny in his pocket might disappear into some incinerator at any time. So in my opinion, we still have to work honestly and make money steadily. His colleague's words caused the Cambion demon to be wrapped in a pair of wings of bone-chilling fear. Cold sweat drenched his sideburns, but it had nothing to do with the breeze blowing over. Although the residents of Sigil City did not mind to enjoy the cool breeze for a while. The 212th unlucky one, Keyes thought to himself as he silently counted the number of doctors who were dragged out. Since the accident last night, in which Turns lost an arm, the members of the Gods and Non-Gods Association had not been idle. They had invited almost all the doctors in Sigil City who were famous for treating external injuries. However, how could the bite of the god of mice and bats be so easily cured? The front tooth in the mouth of the Rat King, Skaven, was actually a decayed tooth from Les Ave wood. The wound caused by it was not only difficult to heal, but it would also fester continuously under the effect of a curse until the injured person's whole body rotted. Even though the Gods and Non-Gods Association were all-powerful, due to the core principles of the association, they could not let the priests be afraid of divine spells. Although ordinary priests were helpless against Les Avewood's curse, other spellcasters, including Turns himself, who was an unorthodox magic spell master, used various spells to only slightly slow down the speed of the curse. The pain caused by the festering of the body first broke Turns' state of mind. Furious, he began to curse the incompetence of the doctors. Then, as he continued to lose control of his emotions, he began to punish the doctors physically. Later, he even killed many of the doctors who could not treat his illness. This was the number that Keyes had counted just now. However, even though Turns had become ruthless, he still maintained his rationality. Even though his confidant, Lisa, advised him to ask Keyes, the pharmacist, to come over and take a look, Turns still refused the suggestion. What a joke! He knew that Keyes was the partner of Puwu the half-goat, and Puwu's teacher was the famous woolly thousand-herb cup in Sigil City. Tynes had always kept a respectful distance from the healing potions passed down by that faction. At least he still had half his life left. If he were to drink those potions that used the demon-hunting spider's poison as a condiment, he might just die on the spot. This worried Keyes terribly. Based on the current situation, the plan to exchange the herbicide for information on Stim had most likely gone down the drain. Therefore, other than using force, which was the worst option, he could only hope that he could find an opportunity to make a deal with Turns. However, it had dragged on for too long. Keyes had to get information on Stim as soon as possible and find the god of virtual games as soon as possible. Anything could go wrong if he was late. Sometimes, the worst option was better than no option. The place of truth, Turns' private lounge. At this moment, the deity who had reigned over the multiverse for thousands of years, the chairman of the Divinities Guild, had an uncertain expression on his face. He stared at his arm that had been severed at the elbow, enduring the excruciating pain caused by the slow festering of the wound. His mouth kept casting spells, and he kept trying to name the curse power to contain its spread. But no matter what he tried, the strange power from Les Avit could not be dispelled from his body. Could it be that it involves the origin of the gods, so I have to find a higher level of power, or ask for the forgiveness of the god of rats and bats to lift the curse? As the chairman of the Divinities Guild, he did not have any hope for the latter two options. Even if he was willing to bow his head and admit defeat for the sake of his injury, the entire guild would become his enemy. For a big shot like him, life was like a boat sailing against the current. If he did not move forward, he would have to take a big step back. And if he took a step back, he would have to face the joint attack of his former enemies, his former subordinates, and many others. Chapter 642. No matter which culture, the pronunciation of the word tradition was deep and condensed like the cornerstone under the road. You could ignore its existence, but you could not deny its role. Otherwise, it was easy to make a mistake and step into the mud pit and trap woven by rules and order. F***ck tradition. Enduring the severe pain, Barnes picked up a sharp scalpel and cut off a layer of the wound on his broken arm to delay the spread of the ulceration. Les Avewood's curse almost drove this president crazy. If there is no power, the gods and not the theocracy will no longer be used by me. Instead of that, it is better to give it a last try. Damn false god, I, Barnes, will sound the final bell for you. According to the tradition of the gods and not the theocracy, or the difference in ideology between factions, although the association attempted to subvert the beliefs of all gods, it never took the initiative to launch a military attack against an invincible opponent. Resorting to violence was a job that only the deteriorators of the Doomsday Guardians liked to do. But under the ravages of the curse, Barnes was about to lose his mind. Otherwise, he would not order the execution of the surgeons who came to see him. For a person who lacked reason, no matter how crazy a decision he made, it was not unusual. President, in the conference hall of the Truth House, when Barnes finished speaking about his decision, Vice President Lisa pondered for a moment and stood up to question, "Do you really want to carry out a purge of the Ratmen and Batmen in Sigil City? This is just the beginning." Barnes glanced at his subordinates who had always obeyed his orders and never asked any questions, then he said in a deep voice, "We must first stabilize the internal situation before we fight foreign aggression. After that, we will declare war on Les Avewood, invade his kingdom, and launch a war against the god." If his decision just now caused many backbone members of the association to worry, then his second decision was like a wave of ripples. Then his second decision was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, causing everyone present to be unable to help but whisper to each other. Remember, this is a resolution, not a discussion. I am now exercising the final decision as the president. Because of the power of the word spirit, Barnes' words were like huge falling stones that smashed into the hearts of the backbone members present. Originally, they wanted to refute, but at this moment they all quieted down. The tiefling warlock Lissa looked around at everyone who remained silent. In the end, he slowly sat down. "That is your promise. We are willing to comply." However, nobody noticed the hesitation in Lissa's eyes. When Barnes' order was carried out, the entire Sigil City was moved. Including the Wheel of Fortune Casino, all the assassin and spy organizations, and even small guilds like the Rat Catchers Guild, all received high bounties from the gods. For a period of time, all sorts of people came to catch rats in the lairs, the lower city area, the scribes' area, and even the ladies' area where the rich lived. Moreover, the targets they captured were not limited to rat. The ratmen and equerts were also affected. Although the originally bustling market was still overcrowded with merchants and customers, every shop was actually deserted. The people who came here were not here to buy or sell anything. They were all catching mice. The Brotherhood of Order and other organizations that maintained law and order in Sigil City had already realized the danger of this situation. They sent out many patrols in an attempt to disperse the fanatical crowd that was running for the high bounties. However, the gods did not say anything and directly interfered. Because Barnes was injured, he had transferred almost all the armed forces from the Outlands and the astral plane back to Sigil City. Thus, the gods' military power was unprecedentedly strong. Even the Brotherhood of Order, which was known for its stubbornness, had to temporarily avoid the attack. Why hasn't Dabas taken action yet? Such behavior has already affected the operation of Sigil City. Quest asked Pu Wu with a frown as he looked through the glass door at a group of grey dwarves who were busy on the street. They were painting blue paint on a few goblins who had been beaten black and blue in an attempt to disguise themselves as equerts to look for the gods and not the gods in exchange for rewards. The half-goat, who had grown up in Sigil City and claimed to be the strongest of the strongest, only smiled bitterly. He shrugged helplessly and replied with a sigh, because in their eyes, this kind of chaos might be very interesting. As long as the Gods Association maintains their last bit of rationality and does not attempt to overthrow the rule of the ladies or destroy the streets of the ladies' district, they will not take the initiative to interfere. Moreover, similar incidents have happened several times before. For example, when the large associations were first born, in order to find their position in the city, they caused even more trouble than now. The Dabbas did not interfere. They just waited for the association to establish their position and a new order, and naturally, they would stop. They call this the price of order. The cost of chaos is more appropriate, Keyes retorted. The half-goat shrugged again, indicating that he could not do anything about it. We can't let this continue to happen. We can't let the Gods Association go crazy together with the Gods Association. If something goes wrong in the end, our plan to obtain Stim's information will be completely ruined. In fact, he had already started to take action. During his days in Sigil City, Keyes had been keeping a low profile and did not use too much force to distinguish himself, and this caution had given him enough rewards. For example, the casino with the Zen, or sarcastic, name, Wheel of Fortune, and everything about the plunder. "Go and tell Shemashaka," said a man wrapped in a hooded robe as he stared at the two hybrid giant guards in front of him, and just as the two brutes were about to slap him, he took out a token engraved with the emblem of the Ring of Fortune and stopped them. "Tell her that the allies of the ring have something to discuss." The so-called Allies of the Ring was a system set up by Shemashaka, the underworld queen of Sigil City. As the largest information service provider in the entire Gate City, she had her own connections with other forces. The Circle Ally was her most important source of information. That small token symbolized the rare friendship or respect between the judges of Yugros and the judges of Yugros. According to the agreement, in order to obtain this friendship, the allies of the ring had to provide extremely valuable information for Shemashaka, and it could not be just a one-time deal. Similarly, in exchange, when the allies of the ring wanted Shemashaka to do something, she could not refuse as long as she did not die in vain. Chapter 643. Apart from the two mixed blood giants at the entrance, most of the employees in the Wheel of Fortune casino were tieflings. This was no secret. Most tieflings who lived in Sigil City had only two choices: join the Gods Guild or join the Marauders. After the ancient tiefling empire was destroyed, Turns inherited the empire's resources and brought a large number of tieflings to Sigil City. He started from scratch and founded the Gods Guild. But out of practical considerations, the Gods Guild only needed nobles and soldiers who had undergone strict training and were capable of combat. The remaining commoners were mostly abandoned and forced to live on the street. Shemashaka united the tiefling commoners who had no one to rely on. She provided them with food and clothing, but this wasn't out of pity. This evil demon from the scorching inferno specifically found people to train the tiefling commoners, turning them into qualified assassins, spies, pickpockets, and any other talents that she needed. After Shemashaka gained sufficient manpower, the originally ordinary female Yugros judgment demon began to rapidly rise in power. She took over every dark corner of Sigil City and gained the highest authority after the goddess of pain. Shemashaka's investment brought about great returns that made everyone envious. Many people tried to imitate her, but none of them succeeded. Shemashaka's circle ally finally arrived at Shemashaka's office after walking through a rather long corridor and hiding himself well. 2 tiefling attendants were standing by the door. Judging from their posture and appearance, they appeared to be ordinary mafia thugs. However, both of them were missing a ring finger, in order to match their hidden swords that could be shot out. So, these two tiefling attendants were actually elite assassins under Shimshaka. My dear ally. The moment the Mafia Queen opened the door, her voice came from outside. I'm honored to have you here. No matter what it is, please feel free to ask. Shimshaka will do her best to satisfy your request. Just like before, Shimshaka replied. However, he wasn't praising her appearance. You're always so considerate. Shimshaka glanced at the two waiters behind him as he spoke. It was actually quite dangerous for a warlock to have an assassin standing so close to her. Ha ha ha! Hiding his smile, Shimshaka waved his hand, and the two assassins returned to the door. They closed the walnut door, which was wrapped in 3 layers of calfskin. President Lisa is still so cautious. But here, you can rest assured. I've already activated a defensive array around my office. No matter what we do or say here, the people outside won't know the slightest bit. The Queen of the Underworld licked her lips and made a seductive gesture. Even so, Reza kept his figure hidden within his cloak. First of all, it's vice-chairman, not chairman. He first corrected a mistake in Reza's words, before bluntly stating the purpose of this trip. As an ally of the Circle, I need you to kill someone for me. Oh? Let me guess. Is it Barnes? Although Shimshaka pretended to be seductive on the surface, every word of his was clear. He's gone mad. What he did was not only destroying the future of the Gods Association. Also, when Shimshaka said Burns, Liza was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He angrily pulled off his hood and said a lot of words like a machine gun that had pulled the trigger to hide his emotions. You don't need to be afraid, and I don't need to listen to your explanations. Actually, when we agreed to become allies of the Circle of Ditchering, I already expected that today's meeting would happen, the Queen of the Underworld said. Also, Barnes' recent crazy actions are indeed likely to push all the tieflings in Sigil City to the edge of the storm. My subordinates will also suffer in the future, making it difficult for them to move forward. His current shameless behavior makes him seem like a naughty child who doesn't care about the feelings of others while relying on his family's support. Although, he does indeed have a good father. Otherwise, how could he start from scratch and obtain the resources of the Tiefling Empire? Shimshaka's words pierced Reza's heart like a sharp sword. Reza's face couldn't help but twitch. As a true descendant of the ancient Tiefling Empire's royal family, legally speaking, Lisa was the true inheritor of those resources. But in reality, due to the decline of the Empire at that time, Lisa had no choice but to compromise with Thanes and the 9 prisons of Bader behind him. He used the inheritance that he should have inherited in exchange for a chance for most of the survivors of the Empire to survive and followed Barnes to Sigil City to seek development. Although he had agreed to give up on taking care of the ordinary tiefling commoners, he had always felt a strong sense of guilt. He felt that he had failed his subjects' trust in him. This was the main reason why he became Shamisha's ally. After all, most of the tiefling commoners' descendants were working under this underworld empress. Originally, he had never thought of exercising his rights as a Circle ally and having Shamisha do something for him. However, Terrence's actions had pushed the Gods and Non-Gods Association to the brink of danger. Due to Terrence's stubbornness, at least 3 major guilds that were comparable in strength to the Gods and Non-Gods Association had already expressed their hostility towards him. Not only that, as Terrence's actions of killing ratmen, batmen, and so on increased, and most of these actions were carried out by tiefling soldiers, more and more intelligent lifeforms began to view the tiefling race with hostility. They even started taking revenge on the tiefling race. However, the tieflings didn't dare to target the Gods and Non-Gods Association soldiers. Instead, they targeted the ordinary tiefling commoners living in Sigil City. Lisa knew that 5 tiefling commoner settlements had been attacked today alone. Actually, before Lisa came to find Raider Shamisha, he had made one last attempt. Should we tell those tiefling commoners to come to the Temple of Bader and find a place to hide? You think that building a shelter will be enough to stop the bandits' hostility? Old friend, you didn't have such unrealistic kindness in the past. Until now, Lisa still remembered the contents of the conversation that Turns had said. It was really fresh in his memory. Besides, what does the lives of those tieflings have to do with us? If we take them to the Temple of Bader, where will we go to live? Are we supposed to give up the Temple of Truth for those ants to live in? People will always die in war, and I just so happen to need a war like this. So, who cares about them? Cleaning up the rats is the most important thing right now. You're always right. I'll make the arrangements immediately. Chapter 644. After receiving the report from the android, Keyes could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. He had finally found an opportunity to seize the initiative again. Therefore, Shemashaka had obtained the authorization of the young blue dragon. If necessary, he could take action and completely solve the problem. We've made sufficient preparations. Of course, if we can get more help, success may be faster. When he found an opportunity to contact Lisa again, Shemashaka directly showed him the 3 preparations he had made: a metal mouth-sealing device that looked like a mask, a dozen needles polished from obsidian, and a broken piece of the adamantine lampstick. Assassination can also be done by cursing, sniping, and other methods to give the target a fatal blow from a distance. But as an old-fashioned person, I still preferred to do things like Shadow Dancer, where I would put on a grand final performance in front of my target. That way, it's safer to ensure that he's completely dead. At least, he won't come looking for trouble in a short time. In addition, it'll make it easier for us to deal with his body later. After all, he's a big shot and has the care of many people. This mouth-sealing device can be used to lock his mouth. There are 3 powerful spells on it that can make the old man's spell lose its effect in an instant. However, the spell won't last for too long. We have to find the right opportunity to use it. Obsidian needles. I'm sure you won't like them as a spellcaster, because they're digested with the digestive fluid of the magic sunflower. As long as they're inserted into a mage's body, their spellcasting ability will slowly dissipate. This is the second insurance. It can ensure that as long as he dies once, even if he's resurrected by his father, he'll only be an ordinary old man. I don't believe that the 9 prisons of Bader has anything to do with fatherly love and filial piety. Tynes, who has lost his value, will never be able to rise again. As for this adamantine lampstick, it's obviously a fake. However, even if Tynes picks it up and examines it, he probably won't be able to find anything wrong with it in a short time. By the way, the candle made from the stick's mud isn't cheap. You'll have to send me more useful information in the future to make up for my damaged wallet. Lisa listened very carefully to Shemashaka's explanation. The first 2 items were clearly used to distract him, so they had to be something that could kill him. Even though Shemashaka claimed that the broken lampstick was a fake, he had no doubt that anyone would believe it to be the real deal as long as the Underworld Queen took it out. This was because no matter where the theft occurred in Sigil City, the stolen goods would most likely fall into her hands, and then there was a high chance that the original owner would buy them again. After all, this kind of business was also one of his main projects. Do you need any extra help? It's simple. I'll beat around the bush, Shemashaka continued. Today, the gods who aren't Radish Patrol, no offense, but it's a funny name to call the supplies I'm buying, will receive an auction flyer in the market. It will list some of the items I'm going to auction. That fake would also appear in it. What you need to do is to give him a definite answer when he asks or assigns you various tasks. My analysts have evaluated the situation. They all agree that although Turns has gone crazy, he hasn't reached the level of having a smooth-brained sulcus. Therefore, when he learns that his little toy is going to be auctioned, there's a high chance that he won't choose to take it by force. Instead, He'll abide by the rules of Sigil City and buy it from me. Since he's injured and his injuries are related to the god's curse, since the lampstick can strip away divine power, it'll be of great help to him in healing himself. In this case, Turns is determined to buy back the lampstick. It's very likely that he'll sneak out of the impregnable house of truth and attend my auction in person. Of course, with that old man's cunning, he'll definitely do some research and security preparations in advance. As the vice president and his absolute confidant, you're the best candidate for those tasks. Therefore, the answer you give is crucial because it will give Turns more confidence. As long as he comes to my territory, I guarantee that he'll never be able to walk out of here again. After listening to Shimshaka's explanation of additional help, Lisa thought for a moment and then nodded. This isn't difficult. I think I can do it well. However, you'd better do what you said. Make sure he can't walk out of here again. Otherwise, the friendly cooperative relationship we currently maintain will be broken. If something happens to me, you won't have it easy either. In the face of this kind of threat, the underworld queen, who was accustomed to storms and waves, still maintained her calm. Trust is expensive. It can't stand any test. Most of what I have now is based on the mutual trust between the Circle allies. If I betray your trust, then others will be disappointed in me. I can't afford that kind of loss. Although it wasn't a direct answer, Lisa still felt a little relieved after hearing what she said. After discussing some details, the vice president of the Gods Association left the Wheel of Fortune casino. Except for the android Shimshaka, no one knew of his arrival, and no one knew of his departure. Well, that's not right. Keys, who was hiding behind the scenes, also knew the information that the android knew. Keep all the video data. Sitting on the sofa on the top floor of the 10,000 Herb Hall, the young blue dragon operated a crystal panel. Thanks to Shay's invention in Traction City, he could use the eyes and ears of the android to understand what she and Lisa were talking about. At the same time, it was also very convenient to pass some information to her. We have to prepare a suitable set of shackles for the vice president. Oh no, it's the future president. Shimshaka gently twisted the pendant on his earlobe and said in a low voice, "Please rest assured, I have prepared everything. The two big fish are about to take the bait. What we have to do now is wait patiently, and at the same time, check the various baits and traps used to deal with them again. Do what you're good at, and leave what you're not good at to me." Keys responded, "Make sure everything is ready. After this battle, the casino will probably need to be renovated, but I promise that the rebuilt Wheel of Fortune will reach a new height. Everyone in Sigil City must know that we have the ability to control their fate." Chapter 645. According to the Six Dimensions theory, you could meet any stranger in the world through up to 5 people. Therefore, the speed at which certain information spreads is sometimes faster than we think. A buyer who was on a radish patrol mission got an auction poster in the market area. He was illiterate, so he just put the poster in his pocket and prepared to use it as a cleaning product when he went to the toilet. When he returned to the camp in the Broken Temple, a friend of his borrowed the poster. His friend was obviously more anxious than him to solve his physiological problems. Since he had nothing to do, the man used the poster as a reading material to pass the time. As a result, he saw a shocking piece of news. He hurriedly wiped the poster with dirt and hurriedly sent it to the quartermaster. The quartermaster also realized the importance of the content and directly submitted the poster to the Legion commander. After the Legion commander passed the crumpled and tattered poster, it finally appeared in front of Thanes. An unknown street thug, the buyer, the buyer's friend, the military supply officer, and the Legion commander passed the information to the person Shimisha wanted to give it to. The poster containing the content of the Mafia Queen's latest auction fell into the hands of the person Shimisha wanted to give it to. "Lisa, I want you to investigate something for me." When Thanes called Lisa over and whispered to her, This god was not a vice president of the theocracy, but he had just returned to the broken temple from the Wheel of Fate. Thines could not help but show a hint of surprise on his face. I know it's strange, so I asked you to check it out first. Thines trusted this old man who had followed him for thousands of years. He felt that the change in Lisa's expression was very reasonable. After all, the one who stole my burning scepter should be a spy sent by the false god, Les Avewood. I'm also wondering how it fell into the hands of the raiders. Hearing this, Lisa pretended to hesitate for a moment. The association is now very well staffed. Among the several associations in Sigil City, we should be the one with the strongest armed forces. If you suspect that the burning scepter really fell into Shamisha's hands, we might as well send the army to wipe out her nest, and then go see her collection for ourselves. Hey, calm down. Remember what I told you? Thines rejected Lisa's suggestion. You need to calm down in the face of major events. Our most important thing now is to fight the false god, Les Avewood, and eliminate any remaining spies in the association. If we act rashly against the female fox, it may cause the other associations to speculate, and they may also withdraw their armed forces. At that time, it will be difficult for our army to be deployed out of Sigil City. Well, you are always right, said Liza respectfully. But we do not know whether this Shemashaka is in league with Les Avewood. If she is Les Avewood's woman, should we? That's why I asked you to investigate. Thines frowned. There was another pain in his broken arm. He knew that he had to continue to use magic to suppress the injury, so he impatiently interrupted Lisa's question. But I don't think so. If the female fox and the false god are really in cahoots, then she probably won't expose the stolen goods now. She knows that it will cross my bottom line and bring the final doom to her Wheel of Fortune casino. Sensing the fluctuations in the other party's emotions, Lisa wisely chose to leave first to carry out the task given by Thines. The best way to get along with a somewhat crazy person was to keep enough distance, because only then could one avoid being sprayed with saliva, and at the same time, it was convenient to suppress the urge to smash the other party's head. After a series of meticulous and cumbersome investigation procedures, when the vice president appeared in front of Thines again, there was an extra 2 or 3 inches of material in his hand. As you expected, Lisa said to his old officer in a very confident tone. The female fox was just lucky recently. Her people caught a nest of little mice in the morgue. After putting the material on Thines' favorite table called Fortitude, Lisa stopped talking. Saying as little as possible was the best way to lie. After all, Thines was only missing an arm and not an eye. He could clearly see the content written in black and white on the material. So, after Skaven escaped from the broken temple, he fled all the way to the morgue and wanted to leave Sigil City through a portal that had not been marked by the explorers. As a result, the person who was supposed to pick him up, a Cambion demon, became his death warrant and killed him. After that, the Cambion demon wanted to leave with the things, but there was an accident when he escaped. He was robbed by the plunderers. That's basically it, but Lisa pondered for a moment. I think there may be other auction items in Shemashaka's auction. For example, the Cambion demon who may still be alive. And that guy's price may be added to the price of your stolen gold lampstick. It is said that Shemashaka has been very unhappy with her family recently, so her purse may have suffered a little setback. Most likely, she wants to make up for it from us. So, why don't we? No, Lisa. Thines raised his undamaged palm, raised an index finger, and shook it while interrupting the vice president's words. We want to be fair in what we do. Besides, wanting to extort money is never a moral stain in Sigil City. She has the ability to seize the opportunity. We do need that thing and the guy she's holding. So, it's not impossible to reward her with a bone. I'll arrange for people right away. Understanding the vice president's thoughts, Lisa immediately responded. Let them bring enough money to participate in the auction. At the same time, we have to give a warning to the potential auction participants. Thines did not immediately refute his subordinate's proposal. He thought for a moment before giving a reply. To be on the safe side, I want to personally go to the women's area and participate in this auction. I need you to prepare some simple travel matters for me. There's no need to warn them. My appearance at the auction venue is the best warning to those people. As you wish. Coming out of Thines' office, Lisa returned to his lounge and sat in front of his favorite wisdom chessboard. He reached out and picked up the chess piece that symbolized fortress and switched it with king. The king's chariot has changed positions. Chapter 646. I have to remind you, everyone, this is the Wheel of Fortune. It's not a place suitable for causing a ruckus. Two hybrid giants stood in front of the main entrance of the casino, reminding the guests out of their duty. However, if their words weren't so shaky, they might have been more persuasive. Still, it was better than nothing. In fact, they were about to piss their pants. Those were two pit fiends, genuine and powerful demons. Although the two hybrid giants were very tall, any one of them could crush them into minced meat with a flick of their fingers. The two pit fiends couldn't be bothered with the advice of inferior beings. They were just bodyguards brought here by the self-made Chairman Thorne. Without the owner saying anything, they couldn't point their fingers too much. As a guest participating in the auction, you can bring 3 people with you, including but not limited to friends, bodyguards, attendants. Lisa stood beside Thorne, holding a poster that had been restored and refurbished. She read it out to the two hybrid giants. I know that there's no point in telling small fries like you all this. Report to Lady Shimshaka that the true buyer has arrived. Tell her to prepare the best box. Before he could finish, a strange statue of a succubus paladin at the entrance lit up. A portal sparkling with light blue stardust was activated, and a bell-like laughter rang out from within. Box, wine, delicacies, beauties. I've prepared everything. I didn't know that our most esteemed guest would be coming. Please forgive me for being late to welcome you. Plunder Shimshaka walked out of the portal, turning to the side and making a gesture of invitation. This is a special passage for VIPs. It leads directly to the box in the auction. Sizing up this female Yugoloth, the two pit fiend bodyguards showed disdain on their faces. With their arcane vision, they were naturally able to see the magic light that was so condensed that it was almost tangible. But in the eyes of these two, it was all a waste of effort. As long as they wished, no matter what protection she provided for herself, she could only end up miserably returning to the scorching hell under its powerful power, or worse. Let's go in. The cold wind during peak hours isn't friendly to an old man like me, Thorne suddenly spoke up from the side. The two pit fiends who were acting as bodyguards looked at each other. A delicate brat with a weak constitution. The two of them grinned at the same time, revealing a cruel smile. One in front, one at the back. One of the pit fiends walked in front of Thorne and Lisa, ensuring the safety of the portal and the people on the other side before sending a message for them to follow. The other pit fiend walked behind Shimshaka, reaching his hand into the portal that was sputtering stardust. Evil runes surged out of his hand, quickly spreading to the entire portal. Shimshaka tried, but found that she had already lost control of the portal. She couldn't close it at all. Mistress Fox, the pit fiend's razor-sharp teeth, gave a suggestion that sounded more like an order: get a few people to stand guard here, in case any stray cats or dogs accidentally barge into the box. Otherwise, you'll have to hire people to clean up the blood and brains after we leave. Thank you for the reminder, Shimshaka replied with a smile, but in her heart, she had already given this fellow a death sentence. As an android of the former queen of the underworld, she naturally inherited all of her memories and likes and dislikes. She had never shown mercy to anyone who dared to call her a fox. However, now wasn't the time. Wait a little longer. I guarantee that no one will disturb you, or step into the quiet little room you need before you die. After passing through the portal, they arrived at a VIP lounge on the second floor of the Wheel of Fortune casino. This was because this place was originally prepared for some of the important figures of Imprint City. Therefore, the room was spacious and the decorations were exquisite. Shimshaka naturally had other preparations prepared for this room. In a secret compartment in the room, there were hired water sirens who kept singing songs passed down from the ancient Tiefling Empire. With just a call, they would bring all kinds of food, drinks, and other hobbies to serve them. In the middle of the room, there was a bronze display frame with the shape of a crowing raven. On top of this display frame was a sparkling and translucent crystal ball. To be on the safe side, the auction items will not be displayed directly in front of you. Instead, they will be displayed through a crystal ball, Shimshaka, who was the last to enter the box, explained to Tynes. But as long as you bid for the item and pay for it, the spell attached to the crystal ball will take effect. You can reach your hand into the crystal ball and get the auction item. A very smart approach. Tynes nodded and praised insincerely. He then sat on a large single sofa and said, "Then what are you waiting for? The people who really want to buy the items are here, and the people who can bid are now in this room." Tynes pointed to Shimshaka. "The auction can be carried out in advance so that it can end earlier." "You're funny. There are so many guests. Don't challenge my patience." "Patience is a luxury for a dying old man." Tynes interrupted Shimshaka's answer without hesitation, as if he was the real master of the Wheel of Fortune. "Smart plunderer, your witty behavior has won my respect. So, we might as well use a smarter and more effective way to communicate. Most likely, only a few copies of your poster have been made. Instead of going through the trouble of creating an auction, forgive me for being presumptuous, but I'm afraid my arrival has already been noticed by many people. Those who may want to bid for the same thing as me probably won't come. We might as well omit all the red tape of starting the auction, increasing the price, and dropping the hammer. Name a number and I'll pay the price. No bargaining." After listening to the president's words, Shimshaka's face suddenly turned pale, as if she had been suppressing the anger in her heart for a long time. "Of course, you are a distinguished guest. Of course, you have to be treated well." Shimshaka snapped her fingers. The water sirens and Kylan, who were the service staff, all walked out of the room. At the same time, 2 or 3 burly orc servants carried a pole over their shoulders, huffing and puffing as they carried some things in. Chapter 647. Deliberate rumors, small framing, bribery, and extortion formed the various links of Shamisha's huge business chain in Sigil City. Step by step, they were closely linked. Most of the time, there was no need for a fight. The opponent would take the initiative to jump into the trap. This was how Skaven fell into the trap. After receiving a gift from the god of mice and bats, Laizu, he was embedded with a god's tooth. He bit off President Barnes's arm and mind. After this Rat King succeeded. He immediately rushed to the big morgue with the stolen burning lamp scepter. Laizu's tooth told him that there was someone waiting for him there. But when he really saw his helpers, a few Cambion demons immediately turned hostile after checking the loot. They turned around and stabbed their sharp daggers into his heart. However, what happened here was not hidden from the raiders, who had countless spies and sources of information in Sigil City. In order to cooperate with Kiza's plan, Shimisha had already adjusted the priority of the information on the Broken Temple to the highest level. After Skaven hurriedly fled, 3 or 4 assassins and shadow thieves followed behind him, monitoring his every move. Of course, Shimshaka's subordinates had witnessed the death of that fellow. With the boss's permission, they took the initiative to attack the Cambion. After all, creating a few corpses in the big morgue wouldn't attract too much attention. Unfortunately, the leader of the Cambion group was too difficult to deal with. He was as slippery as a loach. He took down a few of Shimshaka's subordinates and jumped into a furnace with the lamp-burning stick. He then escaped from Sigil, his whereabouts unknown. Since their mission failed, the shadow thieves and assassins could only clean up the place where they fought. Then, they brought Skaven and the other Cambion corpses back to the Wheel of Fortune. Then, Keys, who had some knowledge of necromancy, asked some clues from the corpses. By analyzing the fragmented memory jigsaw, the young blue dragon guessed the mastermind behind the whole thing. So this is the work of Six Finger. But at that time, it was undoubtedly the worst choice to find trouble with Grazite. Not to mention whether he had the confidence to deal with the Dark Prince in the bottomless abyss. Even if Keys could defeat Six Finger, the Demon Lord probably wouldn't be able to provide him with much information about Stim, the god of virtual games. Therefore, he had to put aside the idea of taking revenge on Graz ZT for ruining his entire plan. Instead, he came up with a scam that targeted the gods and not the Order of Gods. Now that he had caught such a fat sheep, Keys could only take advantage of it, until it was stripped bare, and all the value that the gods, not the gods, could provide was squeezed dry. After the two orcs finished carrying the items, they left the room as if they were fleeing. The people in this room, no matter if it was the terrifying Purgatory Devil or the two big shots of Sigil City, brought great pressure to these nameless pawns. Let's take a look at these items first. Although they aren't auction items, they can prove the value of the auction items. If you want to take them away, the final price will have to be raised by 20%, Shashaka said to Thanes. The chairman of the Order of Gods didn't say anything. He simply gestured, and a pit fiend beside him walked up to the gunny sack. He didn't seem to make any superfluous movement. He just stretched out his palm and opened it. The sacks containing the goods were torn apart and shot out piece by piece, revealing a few corpses that were riddled with holes. Since the corpses had been treated, the blood in the corpses had been drained clean. These filthy things didn't stain the expensive griffin main carpet in the room. However, Shashaka couldn't help but frown when she saw the pit fiend's unscrupulous actions. However, she immediately raised her hand to cover her nose to hide her expression. It's Skaven, and a few Cambion, Lisa whispered from beside Thanes. Preliminary inspection shows that they aren't fakes made with transmutation magic. That shameless traitor has been dead for 2 or 3 days, but there's still traces of the divine force of the false god, Les Ewert, on his body. Thanes nodded and walked over. He didn't mind the stench of the corpses squatting down. He pointed a finger at the wound on Skaven's body, between the second and third sternum. Find a good opportunity to stab him in the heart. It's obvious that the traitor trusted his killer. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed him to walk up to him. He then flipped through the corpses of the other Cambion. Because those guys had the bloodline of the Thanner Re-demons, although they would not return to the abyss with their souls after death like purebred demons, and their corpses would most likely turn into a pool of foam in a short time, their corpses were still rotting on a large scale. It's different from the way Skaven was attacked. The width of the blade is different as well. Judging from the position of the wound, it's a habit of shadow thieves and assassins. After personally examining the corpses, Thanes believed most of Shemashaka's explanation, so he spoke frankly to the Underworld Queen. Thank you for your timely action. You've indeed helped us find a loophole that needs to be remedied. But I still have a small question. Where did the souls of these guys go? As the judgment demon of Yugros, did you, no offense, perform some small operations on them? Did you know, or have you obtained some more valuable goods, and are looking for a good price? Please believe me. Since I came here in person this time, I naturally brought a full wallet. As for you, you may never be able to find a buyer like me, who is both suitable and generous. Shemashaka didn't speak after hearing Thane's words. Instead, she broke off a short branch from her razor vine headdress and cut her palm with the sharp blade. Bionics, like normal creatures, could bleed and feel pain. She wanted to use this method to get rid of the influence of the word of truth on her, to get rid of some confusion and regain her rationality. Mr. Thanes, you're indeed a powerful word of truth. You can always hit the nail on the head. For some reason, those souls have been made into soul prisms by me. Your 2 bodyguards should know that the souls of mortals will be directly crushed and ground clean through the machine produced by Nessus. Every bit of memory will be restored to the most basic spirit. Seeing the change in Thane's expression, Shemashaka smiled. Of course, I have no intention of offending a powerful existence like you, so although I can't say the name, I will still give you a hint. After saying this, she stretched out a palm and made a gesture symbolizing the number 6. Chapter 648. Very well. I'll pay double the price. I'm willing to compensate you accordingly for your injured hand. You pay and I deliver. You're welcome to visit the Wheel of Fortune often. I'll keep this box for you. Important people always had their own pride. Once they got what they wanted, they would not continue to be polite. Tynes needed his own scepter, while Shashaka needed a wallet that was thick enough. It seemed like both of them had gotten what they wanted. Vice Chairman Riza was arranged to pay, and he followed Shashaka out of the box. The others were not idle either. The 2 pit fiend bodyguards cast a few necromancy spells on the pile of corpses on the ground. Skaven and the Cambion demons all stood up once more, automatically lining up against the wall. They would follow when it was time to leave. Not long after, the crystal ball in the middle of the room began to change. Light blue stardust seeped out of it. It's a trick of the Yugoloths. Those warmongers are pretty good at opening portals. The one of the 2 pit fiend bodyguards who was more adept at spellcasting said, "There's nothing wrong with the spell." Tynes did not let his bodyguards help him take the scepter out of the crystal ball, as if he did not want anyone else to touch it. He reached in with his remaining arm, grabbing the scepter and taking it out. In fact, he did not feel this way about the scepter at first, especially when he thought about how he'd obtained it. When Tynes had reached an extremely difficult bottleneck in his path as a mantra wizard, his father, whom he'd only seen a few times, had suddenly appeared, throwing away this inferior artifact in pity. He could still remember the look in his father's eyes. Contempt, disdain. It was as if he saw him as a piece of trash. If not for the fact that the scepter was extremely powerful, and had helped him escape his predicament, Tynes would not have been willing to keep it by his side to annoy himself. However, he now cherished this weapon very much. Especially after he'd lost it once. That feeling of helplessness had been gnawing at his heart ever since the scepter left his side. He thought he was strong enough. That feeling was even more unbearable than the pain of losing his arm. Stroking the cage made of pure gold and smelling the unique scent of the Nether River that seemed to be able to corrode the soul, he felt incomparably intoxicated. Things are back under control, Barnes thought to himself. As long as I recite the specific incantation. A sudden change occurred. The burning lamp scepter in his hand suddenly changed shape and turned into a guillotine that directly cut off Tynes' remaining hand. The sudden pain of having his hand cut off caused Burns to involuntarily let out a howl. He instinctively retreated quickly and shouted at the 2 bodyguards at the same time, "Come and save me if you don't want to fail." Even the Dark Eight would have to use some tricks to arrange for 2 pit fiends to be his bodyguards. The method they used was to get these 2, who were supposed to be struggling to survive in the terrifying Academy of Nessus, to join a program called Social Practice. They came to Sigil to be Tynes' bodyguards for 3,000 years in exchange for enough credits to graduate. When they heard the words fail, the 2 pit fiends' eyes turned bloodshot. They hurriedly rushed towards the person they were supposed to protect. Unfortunately, there was something even faster than them. As if it had teleported, a quakeling darted out of the cupboard in the room. This was a small goblin that could move at 5 times the speed of sound. It was even faster than using a greater teleportation spell in short distances. Whoosh. The quakeling passed by Tynes, who was frantically trying to dodge, and threw something that looked like a mask at him. It then darted back into the cupboard and fled at an even faster speed, disappearing without a trace. The mask flew in front of Tynes, extending its 8 limbs like a face-hugger and latching onto the tiefling's mouth. Not only that, this little toy, that the wondrous craftsman Shay had tinkered with, had a structure that looked like an impact drill from its abdomen. Duong duong duong, it pierced through Tynes' teeth and turned his tongue into a pile of minced meat. The 9 hells, I hope the infernal healing spell can fix the hole in his mouth. The 2 pit fiend bodyguards had already rushed in front of Tynes. One of them used a spell to control the guillotine that was still chasing after him, while the other reached out with his hand, wanting to remove the 2 things on his face. If I were you, at this moment, a person suddenly walked out from the shadows in the corner of the room and slowly approached the guillotine, I definitely wouldn't do those meaningless actions. Can't you see? This is a trap. No matter what you do, it's useless. Without another word, the pit fiend used a binding spell to control the guillotine, casually throwing a fireball at Keys. 5 Shadow Interceptor. Keys disappeared from where he was, reappearing behind the pit fiend. While he was moving, he also picked up the guillotine that was trapped by the spell. As if sensing its master's intentions, the Dragonhead Warhammer hammer immediately returned to its original form, following Keys's swing as it smashed down on the pit fiend's head. Asterisk bang. Asterisk asterisk crack. Asterisk with a muffled sound, one of the pit fiend's horns was broken by the Dragonhead Warhammer. The Dragonhead Warhammer's Megalosaurus mouth expanded to its maximum size, biting into the pit fiend's skull. Hearing the sound of a weapon cutting through the air behind him, Keys swung the pit fiend around like a windmill, ruthlessly smashing it behind him. Asterisk plop. Asterisk the other pit fiend had no time to react, and managed to stab its flaming sword into its comrade's body. Taking advantage of his opponent's momentary distraction, Quest quickly appeared behind him. He extended his arm and used the naked choke technique to choke his opponent's throat. No matter how hard the pit fiend struggled, no matter how its claws scratched, it was unable to pierce through this humanoid creature's weak body. Keys exerted his strength once more, and it was like pulling out a cork from a wine bottle. The pit fiend's head was pulled out of its body. Seeing this, the pit fiend that had been hit in the head and stabbed in the body immediately tried to use a greater teleportation spell to escape. But before he could cast his spell, the Dragonhead Warhammer embedded in his skull relied on the mice energy nucleus to shoot a prismatic spray directly at his brain. Chapter 649. There were many times when people were forced to make difficult choices. Even if sometimes you only have 2 options and both of them are terrible. Between a quick death and a miserable life, Turns chose the latter. Of course, this was the right choice that Quest had made for him. After killing the 2 pit fiend bodyguards, the young blue dragon had even prepared some methods to imprison their souls, preventing them from leaking the news when they returned to Bator. Although it seemed complicated, it was much simpler than how he dealt with Tynes. At the very least, he didn't need to prepare any additional tools to imprison him. "Do you know what this is?" Keys asked the tiefling descendant of a greater devil as he passed a chain flickering with a faint golden luster through Tynes' shoulder blade. "This is a precious magical item made from the iron ore of the splendid paradise, the highest level of the 7 hills of heaven. To be honest, the large sum of money you paid for it was barely enough to cover its cost. Its function was simple. When the evil being tried to escape, or when someone tried to break the shackles, it would automatically drag the trapped being to Cronus. I'm sure you've heard of the splendid paradise. The power of the law of the highest order is so strong that it can annihilate all evil. It's said that even good beings of order will fuse with the essence of this plane, sacrificing their consciousness for glory. Only the greater divine force gods of order had the ability to live in such a place. As for you, you're the former head of the Church of Gods, a tiefling who relied on a greater devil to rise up, and a top villain who's done evil for tens of thousands of years. If you're really sent there, You'll probably face the tragic fate of being purified by the plane. I suggest you don't try it. This chain is very precious, and no god will pay for it. You won't be able to pay for it." After saying this, he glanced at the door. Lisa and Shemashaka were standing there. "If you can persuade him, then what I said earlier won't count." He naturally referred to Lisa. Based on the current situation, he was the best candidate to become the president of the Gods Not Gods Association. At the same time, he would become an even more unbreakable ally. If he didn't want Tynes to appear in front of him one day with a large group of pit fiends, he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. "This is your guarantee? Barnes must die, right now, right now, right now." Still hiding in the hooded robe, Lisa's whole body was trembling. He growled in a low voice, like a beast that had been forced into a corner. "No one has ever given you such a guarantee. If there is, it is your own imagination." Shemashaka stepped in front of him and blocked his view. "My dear ally of the ring, my guarantee is to make the mad fiends disappear and control the situation that is going crazy with him. And I definitely have already fulfilled that promise." Seeing that her words were effective, the queen of the underworld stopped pressuring Lisa. She swayed her way to Tynes, who was tied up like a dumpling, and used her fingers to fiddle with the horn on the head of the young tiefling. "He won't appear, unless you do something that displeases me. Or perhaps one day in the future, his father will come to visit him because he misses his stupid son, but he will come to me instead." As if thinking of something even more terrifying, Lisa couldn't help but ask, "What do you need me to do, and what can you do for me? Only then can you guarantee that those two situations won't happen." Smart people are always quick to understand. Sometimes I really feel that tieflings are even more worthy of having brains than purebred infernal creatures. She pointed at the two mindless pit fiend corpses on the ground. "And you're right about one thing. Before asking me what I can do for you, I asked you what you can do for me. It's actually very simple. As everyone knows, I am the biggest information trader in Sigil. Having established a relationship with the leader of the Gods Not Gods Association, I naturally want to obtain high-level information that others don't have. I have a list of some of the gods that have just appeared. I need you to tell me everything you know about them, everything you have access to, and everything you will be able to access in the future. As a veteran in this field, this information is more valuable to me than to you. After all, I am the only one in Sigil who has the resources to buy this information." Lisa nodded without hesitation when Shemashaka finished speaking, but he still continued to ask, "What about me? What can you provide me? I've already made my stance clear, so you should also show your sincerity. A path of retreat or a fortress. You don't have to choose between the two. I can fulfill both for you." Seeing that Lisa was a little doubtful, Shemashaka patiently explained, "Taking over the leader of the Gods Not Gods Association shouldn't be difficult for you. After all, Tynes' loyalists are in the minority. However, as I said, he has a good father. If that existence really pursues you, in terms of the lifespan of creatures in the lower planes, he can spend tens of thousands of years with you. You can't afford that at all. Of course, you can also choose to resist. If you fail, as long as you don't leave Sigil, you can come to my Wheel of Fate at any time. I can send you to the Scorched Hell before he kills you. Due to some historical issues, the General of the Scorched Hell will not allow a greater demon to set foot in his territory. I know the true identity of Tynes' father. Although he is very powerful, he is not strong enough to be on the same level as the great Lord Yugoloth. When you reach the Scorched Hell, I will give you the chance to reincarnate as a Yugoloth in the Shuraba. Unless the Dark Eight move together, that means the 9 prisons of Bader will declare war on the Scorched Hell. However, you should know very well that this is basically impossible. So when the time comes, as long as you stay in the fortress in the Scorched Hell, the terrifying demons will not be able to find you. Although Shemashaka only provided him with a chance to escape as a guarantee, this was more reassuring than her saying that she would help Lisa resist the possible revenge from the Dark Eight. The former was too much of a lie and did not conform to the nature of the Yugoloth judgment demons at all. An android who had completely inherited Shemashaka's original personality would not make such a mistake. Deal. Chapter 650. Soft Maple City staggered along, ready to fall off the cliff and plunge into chaos at any time. This bright pearl of Treasure City was getting old, dispirited, and crazy, full of the stench of social depravity and moral decay. Even if there was something strange crawling in the streets at night, only a fool would be surprised. Lightning struck the ghost mountain in broad daylight. A bolt of lightning hit the bronze seal on the tomb of evil beasts, cutting off half of the runes. Stones rained down from the sky. The statue bled. The priests of several temples reported that they had found several beasts that had been disemboweled but had still managed to escape, and they had never been able to capture them. In the Steel Fork barracks where the city garrison was stationed, the statue of the god of war was upside down. For 9 days and 9 nights, 10 black vultures hovered over the barracks. One even drove away the eagle that originally lived on the paper tower. In the Northern Wind Tavern, there were a few mercenaries who were on vacation playing cards as they talked about the rumors they had heard from who knew where. This was their unique holiday entertainment. As a security team hired by the mayor for personal safety, they usually didn't have much time to relax. The reason why this tavern was named North Wind was because it was located in the north of Soft Maple City, on the breakwater road adjacent to the Sea of Pain. As long as it was winter, everyone in the tavern would be able to feel the cold north wind. Although many people suggested that the tavern owner strengthen the house, or at least put 2 pieces of cloth in the holes in the walls, the old man didn't have the slightest intention of doing so. "Hey man, what's the hurry? It's still summer. Won't a little wind help relieve the heat?" If someone continued to ask, the old man would probably roll his eyes at that person, and then imitate the philosopher, use his gray eyes to look out of the window at the Sea of Pain not far away. "I really don't know what he's looking at. What's so good about the sea that he hasn't seen enough for decades?" In fact, those people were right. The Sea of Pain was indeed nothing to see. Offshore merchant ships shuttled through the waterway network connecting the cities, the mottled shadows of their sails dotting the dirty gray-brown water. The air high up in the sky was thick and foggy, making it difficult to see the horizon clearly. However, the air near the water was flowing. There was always a little wind blowing about the shore, but it would never approach the shore, as if it were avoiding leprosy. The seagulls were circling high in the sky, and they seemed to be right in front of him. They were grumpy, dull, and lazy like most people at this time of year. For the entire sticky summer this year, we have been working for the despicable Soft Maple City, protecting it from the harassment of its many political enemies, mafia leaders, and undisciplined local troops, but in the end, we don't get the slightest bit of extra gratitude. After the mercenaries in the bar were tired of playing cards and chatting, they drank 2 glasses of lager that tasted no better than horse piss. Then, they began another daily entertainment activity, complaining about the damned weather, stingy employers, and hard work with low pay. The customers who had gathered around them to watch them play cards also tactfully dispersed to other places. Because complaining was the fuse, and beer was the accelerant. It was hard to say when it would ignite the powder keg of emotions. It was said that the group of mercenaries had a few wizards who knew how to play tricks. When they lost their temper, they could even turn people into flatfish. "Oh, what the hell is that?" the old man standing behind the bar asked in surprise. Everyone's attention was attracted by his voice. They followed the direction of his finger and looked at the Sea of Pain outside the North Wind bar. It was a huge ship, super huge, enormous. It was turning the promontory and approaching the dock on the shore. The giant beast was huge and clumsy, dwarfing the surrounding dhow and sailboats. In the middle of the billowing black sail was a blue dragon head, its eyes glowing red, and flames danced behind its broken teeth. There was also a circle of shiny silver around the pattern. "This ship is too big," a mercenary muttered. "A ship of this size will fall apart in a storm." "Why? How do you know?" His companion wanted to get to the bottom of it. "I disappeared on the ship and worked as a handyman, so I know a little about ship." The mercenary's tone dispelled the other people's thoughts of asking more questions. After all, they were all mercenaries, and many mercenaries had secrets of their past that they wanted to keep. This team of bastards from all over the world was tied together by their experiences of fighting side by side in the past and their current situation. It was not surprising that they would have such thoughts. If you used magic to reinforce the ship instead of simply using fish scale planks, pitch, and rusty iron nails, then it's not surprising that such a big ship is so big. Sure enough, there was a mage among the mercenaries who came out to play cards. When it came to his field of expertise, he could not help but reveal the conceit of a professional. While the mercenaries were still watching, guessing, and talking nonsense about what kind of cargo might be unloaded, the big ship had already sailed near the berth. Its huge body directly occupied the berth of 20 sloops. The poor little guys around it could be considered as sampans. Unlike ordinary coastal merchant ships, this big ship did not have a single oar on either side, but at the stern of the ship, there was something like a chimney that constantly spewed out black smoke. After half a day of docking, the chimney stopped spewing out black smoke. The person who received this huge ship was not an ordinary registrar, but the highest-ranking tax officer and port commissioner at the port. As if thinking that only certain important people were worthy of boarding the ship, the king of the dock, who was called a vampire or a jackal by all the merchants who came to Soft Maple City, ran out of his office and stood quietly on the shore, waiting for the important people to disembark. He seemed very nervous and uneasy, and he could not help but take out his handkerchief to wipe the sweat off his face. On the deck of the ship there was a team of tall sailors. They were all wearing armor made of shark skin, and in their hands were standard two-handed weapons. Without the captain's order, these people would not act on their own. "Soft Maple City, I really want to say something, but I don't know." Keyes stood up from the captain's seat and said to the few companions beside him, "Should I say fate's arrangement?" Chapter 651. After appealing to the new president of the Godnot theocracy, Shimisha got the clues she wanted about the newborn gods of the multiverse. After a series of screening, Keyes finally found the coordinates of Stim's hometown. What surprised him was that in the plane where the god of virtual games was, there was a famous city whose name had long existed in his memory. That's right, that city was Soft Maple City. When he first went to the front line of the Blood War, there was a mercenary from another plane who left a deep impression on the young blue dragon. That person saved Keyes' current partner, the paladin Jason, from the dragon subbody of the tyrant worm. Therefore, he deliberately returned to the Ashen World from Sigil City and called his partner to go to that plane to find clues about Stim. At the same time, he also wanted to use this trip to help Jason fulfill his promise to Broom Eyebrows. In order to better sneak into that new world, Keyes let the android Shimisha obtain more information through her channels on the basis of the Godnot theocracy's intelligence. He tried his best to understand everything about this world called Ramsey, the history of the many city-states, the distribution of different races, the relationship between the various forces, and so on. From his point of view, Ramsey was indeed a rather magical world. The first intelligent creatures to appear in this plane were actually only dwarves. The first batch of humans in Ramsey was actually a dependent race of a certain spellcaster group that had migrated from another plane. However, because the number of people who had migrated from that plane was large enough, and the humans' reproductive ability and ability to adapt to the environment were much stronger than that of dwarves, they were able to catch up and become the race with the largest population in the entire plane. However, although there were conflicts between the humans and dwarves in Ramsey, there had never been a large-scale racial war. In fact, the reason why the first batch of humans were able to escape the enslavement of the spellcaster group was because they had received help from the dwarf. It was with the help of the midgets that those humans successfully sealed the Emperor, Madam, and the 10 Calamity Generals who had enslaved them, and obtained their hard-won freedom. It was a great war. The sun was spinning in the sky, the sea was boiling, strange storms hit the land, and little white pigeons appeared in people's clothes. To this day, there were still many areas in Ramsey where magic was chaotic because of the ancient Freedom War. To be honest, no matter how the history of the Ramsey people was written, they had to thank the dwarves for their help. Without the mechanical chocobos made by the gnome craftsmen that would not malfunction due to chaos magic, and without the steam siege chariots that would malfunction from time to time, it would be impossible for the human alliance to break the chains that the Emperor, Lady, and 10 Calamity Generals had tailor-made for them. Therefore, although the dwarves had lost control of the Ramsey people, the humans still maintained a friendly relationship with their ancient allies. At the very least, before the Ramsey people could find a way to solve the dependence of society on the gem-based currency system established by the dwarves, all those in power would carefully hide their ambitions. After all, no mayor would want to wake up one morning and see all the coins in their treasury judged as expired currency by the dwarves' currency circulation center. Because then they would instantly go from being high and mighty people to being penniless paupers. They would not be able to buy new clothes, eat delicious food, and even pay the salaries of the garrison troops or the mercenaries they hired in private. They would be completely torn apart by the people on the next level of the chain of rule. Of course, not everyone had no opinions about this. In order to get rid of this sick dependence, some people had proposed the idea of using agricultural or industrial products as the basis of currency, but most of them were defeated by reality before they could implement it. Their personal wealth would be frozen by the dwarves, and they would be seen as traitors by the authorities in their own city-states, and would be arrested and convicted. Those who escaped could only be reduced to rebels, and those who did not escape in time all became ghosts under the sword. Some dwarves even raised doubts about this situation, but their way of looking at the problem was different from the humans. Most of the voices of opposition, or rather condemnation, among the dwarves, were focused on whether the current situation was contrary to tradition. Did the invention of the financial system castrate the dwarves' passion for invention that they had always prided themselves on? After inventing the financial system, we don't seem to have created anything interesting, meaningful, or technologically advanced. And because this system is stable enough, we don't even have the need to carry out daily maintenance, updates, and upgrade. However, controversy was still controversy, and life still had to go on. Sitting in this fortress built by the stable financial system, the dwarves had already enjoyed too much, and had enjoyed it for too long. Except for a few exceptions, most of the other dwarves did not have the intention to leave the throne and walk out of the fortress to get some fresh air. Of course, they would feel bored, but at this time, demand still created supply. The god of virtual games was born, and many dwarves walked into his temple, Stim's virtual gaming experience hall, and they enjoyed it ever since. The controversy was gradually put aside, and from then on, the focus of their discussions began to be on how to clear Stim's game. Some humans seized this opportunity, and quickly rose up. They took over the business operations at the lower end of the financial chain, which the dwarves found boring. The main people in charge of the various large chambers of commerce began to become the new dignitaries among the humans of Ramsey. Although they were still restricted by the financial system, they were now on equal footing with the mayor, and could even take part in the daily administrative work of the city. "We didn't come to this plane to conquer it," Keyes patiently explained after looking around at everyone. "At least, this trip is not. What we need to do is to integrate into this world like a drop of water falling into the sea, and search for and discover various clues related to Stim. As a weak god born in this plane, he must have left a considerable portion of his clergy and church organization here. We need to find them and dig out useful information from them. After saying this, Keys had Snader cast a legendary illusion spell on all his companions, which was enough to fool weak gods, and temporarily changed their physical characteristics. After that, he led everyone down from their ship. Chapter 652. The people who came with the ship walked down the dock one after another. The sailors used all their strength to move a large box wrapped in copper down the gangplank. A man who looked like a captain briefly negotiated with the dock emperor, and then walked to the breakwater with a few attendants. These people attracted the attention of Garlic Nose. He was one of the beggars on the dock's morning shift. He used his arm to poke his companion's ribs, and then quietly pointed in that direction. Garlic Nose had a special ability. Even if there was a small pile of not-so-pure gemstone coins 50 steps away, his nerves would still tremble. There was something about that batch of sailors, or rather, their captain, that excited every nerve in his body, sending the strongest signals to his brain. A windfall was right in front of him. Sure enough, the captain-like person took out a money bag, took out a few pretty gemstone coins, and played with them in his hand. Garlic Nose's body trembled like a hazelnut branch that found a water source. He poked his companion next to him and told him to quickly take the nearby path to the city center. He picked up the begging bowl and jogged through the streets with a fawning expression on his face. "Hello, my lord. What can I do for you? I'm the most reliable information broker in Soft Maple City." Hearing his self-promotion, the captain's face first showed a trace of confusion. Then, he flipped open a black booklet on his belt, scanned it, and said, "You're wasting." "What?" This time it was Garlic Nose's turn to be confused. "You waste," the man repeated. His voice was unnecessarily louder, and he carefully enunciated every vowel and consonant. "You can waste your time with yourself," Garlic Nose retorted. He cursed his bad luck in his heart before turning around to leave. But the man's face showed a trace of a smile. A strong man stood out from behind him. He walked in front of Garlic Nose and reached out to grab his neck. Like a chicken, he pulled him back. The captain opened his palm, revealing a huge gemstone coin. It was bigger than the biggest gemstone coin Garlic Nose had ever seen in his life. Although he had never seen the pattern engraved on the gemstone coin, he could almost hear the baby speaking in his mind. "My current master needs help. If you are willing to provide this help, I can go with you. It would be best if we could have some fun together." The beggar's bulbous nose was placed on the ground. After hearing what his baby said, he felt a lot more at ease. The luxuriously dressed man, who looked like the captain of the ship, checked the pamphlet in his hand again. "I wish to be taken to a hotel, inn, apartment, tavern, guesthouse, hostel." "Ah? Why are we going to these places?" Counting Nose was shocked at first, then his IQ suddenly rose. Only then did he understand what the other party meant. "That's a literacy book, or rather a dictionary." What he said just now actually means the same thing. Garlic Nose noticed that many people around them were looking at them with great interest. Among them, there was no lack of his competitors. When he thought that the baby might grow wings and fly away from his hands, he trembled nervously. "No, even if Sharon, the head of the thieves in the city, takes away all my treasures," he did not consider the actual value of his treasures, "I have to let this baby accompany me. Besides, that person has a big suitcase, and there may be more baby in it. Even if I can't get all of them, I can at least get 5. No, I want 10. The man ignored him and continued to look down at the pamphlet in his hand. "I'm very happy to be taken to a hotel, which means a place where you can buy a place to rest, and means, okay, I got it. Follow me." Garlic Nose interrupted this vague explanation. He muttered in his heart, "Who cares? Anyway, we are in Sharon's territory. We can have anything we want. Strange, Charon said. They came down from an old ship, and they even brought along an old box with them. The box was even covered with copper sheets, Garlic Nose's companion added. Most likely they are doing business, or they are the gnome's agents, Charon said to himself. He picked up a knife, tore a piece of meat from the fried pork steak in front of him, and threw it into the air. Before the meat touched the roof beam, a dark shadow jumped out from the dark corner of the ceiling and fiercely took the meat away. If they are not doing business, then they are the gnome's agents, Charon muttered to himself. I hope it is the latter. The money we can earn from them is twice as much as the former. Under normal circumstances, we can ask him for a sum of money. Then we can give him to the rebels outside the city and get an extra reward. What do you think, Mr. Weather? The second thief of Soft Maple City stood opposite Charon. His only eye was half closed and half opened. He shrugged but didn't say anything. After all, he was only the second thief. Ever since the boss of bosses, Broom Eyebrows Dalton disappeared, Charon climbed from the original second position to the throne that only the boss could sit on. The sound of flapping wings came from the window. Charon dragged his fat body out of the chair, walked to the window, and came back with a pitch-black crow. He untied a sealed letter tube from the ugly bird's ankle that was as fat as its owner. Then the crow flew to the dark corner of the roof beam to find its companion to chat. Weather didn't like them at all. Everyone knew that Charon's crows were loyal to their master. Charon's current right-hand man, Weather, had once tried to get his hands on the boss's throne. In the end, one of his eyes was taken away by these crows. He didn't lose his life because of Charon's big heart. The current boss was learning everything from Dalton, so he wouldn't ignore someone's ability just because they were ambitious. From observation point 12, Charon said. He opened the letter tube, took out the small note inside, and opened it. It's old Cat, Weather immediately said. He's keeping watch near the Temple of Courage's obelisk today. He said there's no abnormality in the temple. Good, the remaining enforcers didn't come out to patrol. This is definitely good news, Charon nodded. Bartender, prepare the wine. Our guest will be here in a while. You have to warmly welcome the new friend. Near the bar counter in the distance, a tall bartender replied, Anyone who can make a good deal for us is a good friend. Those babes have always been charming. Only men like us deserve to have them. Ah. Looking at Charon's drastic change in mood, Weather didn't say anything. Being the assistant of the current number 1 thief was like being smashed to death with a fragrant insole. It was truly unbearable. Chapter 653. If you wanted to observe a city thoroughly, you couldn't close your eyes and listen to everything. You have to prick up your ears and open your eyes to observe the 2 corners of the city, the place where the sun shines and the place where the filth and the filth are hidden. The first place was easy to find as long as you had enough money in your pocket and wore clothes that were more luxurious than the king's. To find the second place, in addition to the first 2 requirements, you also needed a good guide. For example, Garlic Nose, who was fascinated by the charm of Baby and was leading Keys and the others. 3 streets away from the house of Sharon, Keys was still thinking about something while walking. It all started 10 days ago, when they had just arrived at Ramsey. In order to disguise their identities, they brought a ship, which was a half-mechanical, half-biological ship modified by a Leviathan. It was indeed a waste to use it for traveling. Therefore, they robbed several ships at sea, which were all special ships used by various chambers of commerce to transport gemstone coins. After obtaining a large number of gemstone coins, the half-lich Snade did some tests on the coins. He threw the broken gemstones into a plate filled with hydrofluoric acid solution, and then slowly stirred it. From time to time, he dripped 2 drops of other kinds of liquids, and finally obtained a pool of green liquid. After some more tests, Snade began to list out calculations on a piece of paper to analyze the composition of the gemstones. This is so interesting. After finishing the experiment, the half-lich immediately reported to Keys. Are they real gemstones? Snade's mechanical artificial body shook, as if he was laughing. Of course not, he explained patiently. At first, I thought that the gemstone coins were so fragile because of the way they were cut. But after some tests, I found that they were just some kind of glass. Moreover, gemstone coins of different values were basically the same thing. The only difference was their color. And those colors are made by the dwarves with dyes. You mean, the currency used by all humans in Ramsey is actually glass? Keys thought for a moment and came up with a bold inference. Then the core of the so-called financial system of the dwarves is actually the secret of making colored glass. It is because of this technology that they control the issuance, circulation, and certification of human society's currency. That's right, and I also learned an interesting piece of information from interrogating the cadres of the Chamber of Commerce, the Demolic said. Every once in a while, the dwarves would come into contact with the large Chamber of Commerce. They would recycle the damaged gemstone coins stored in the Chamber of Commerce and give the Chamber of Commerce new gemstone coins as compensation after the value of the gemstone coins. Nominally, they are carrying out product maintenance, but in fact, they are preventing the Chamber of Commerce from discovering the secret of gemstone coins. It was because of this discovery that Quess had his ship deviate from the sea route and sailed to the port of Soft Maple City to land. Because he had a general plan that could be used as a breakthrough to deal with STEM. However, there were still many details that needed to be designed and dealt with. To put it bluntly, coming to Soft Maple City was a trip of trial and error. Therefore, they disguised themselves as ordinary merchant ships, although they did not look ordinary at all, and then pretended to be foreigners, who did not understand the dialect of Soft Maple City in an attempt to attract the attention of the people living in the dark corners of the city. Instead of looking for them, it was better to let them look for you, or like now, there was someone who could help lead the way. As for why he was looking for those scumbags, a subordinate named Glove once said to him, "Every society has its own grievances and resentments, but there is no place where such emotions gather more than those living in the dark corners of the city. They are like a powder keg, and maybe a spark is enough to blow up the whole city." Keys was not interested in blowing up the whole city. His target was Stim, who treated others as his playthings. But just like eating rice one bite at a time, if he wanted to overthrow a god, it would not be of much use to just rush over and fight with him, although it was not completely impossible, but Keys's strength did not allow him to do so. As the saying went, even a wildfire will not burn it down, and it will grow again when the spring breeze blows. As long as there were people who supported his ideas, as long as he had believers, then no matter how badly he was hurt, that God could climb back to the top. This was where the gods cheated. Their tolerance for error was far higher than that of mortals. Therefore, Keys either did not do anything to him, or he had to make sure that Stim paid all the debts he owed. Like pushing down dominoes, he wanted to set off a storm in the world of Ramsey. He wanted to bury that high and mighty god in the depths of the sand forever, never to rise again. And the first domino he was going to push down was Soft Maple City. After knowing the secrets that the dwarves deliberately hid, Keys already had a domino in his hands. Now what he had to do was to find the right finger to push the domino. "Sir, this way." Pugnose walked in front and enthusiastically guided Keys and the others. "This is the house of Charlene. You can enjoy a tavern, a hotel, an apartment, a guest house. Anyway, it has all the services you can imagine." As he spoke, his face showed an obscene expression that said, "You know what I mean." Ignoring this guy, Keys and his companions walked through the door of the house of Charlene. The lighting here was good, and there was a hole in the ceiling that could be used for lighting and access. But other than that, there was really nothing else to be found here. The walls were covered with black smoky spots, the floor was a mixture of old rushes and some kind of beetle juice, and the barrels behind the bar were soaked with sour beer that could not be sold. There were also a few guys who were obviously up to no good staring at them. "Boss, I've brought the sheep. It's fat. Don't you have to give me a raise for my hard work?" Bulbous Nose, who was leading the way for Cuz and the others, had already run to the side of a fat man. He still had that flattering smile on his face as he bent his body and chattered incessantly to please the fat man. Well said, well said." Charlene patted Pugnose's cheek and said to Weather beside him, "Since our friends are here, why don't we give them a proper welcome?" The second bandit, Weather, nodded. Then a small hand axe appeared in his hand. He swung his arm and swung the axe at the door of the house of Charlene, cutting a rope on the door. Bang! The wooden fence fell and a lot of dust flew up. At the same time, it also blocked the passage between this place and the outside world. Chapter 654. What a terrible welcome ceremony! Blue the Ogre mumbled in a low voice. The three brothers were now under the effect of magic, and their original appearances were hidden. They looked like ordinary human brawny men. Especially the food. I really hate people without talent messing around with ingredients. Wasting food is always shameful. After the wooden fence fell down, a burly bartender walked out from behind the bar counter. He held a plate in his hand. On it were a few pieces of bread with moldy spots, a bowl of yellowish-brown sour beer that looked like it could kill people, and 3 rats that were thrown into the oven without being skinned, head, or tail removed. "A special set from the house of Sharon," the burly bartender said as he slammed the plate on the table in front of Quess. Half of the sour beer spilled out as he said in a muffled voice, "It's prepared for special guests. The boss said that he'll give you a discount. Such a sumptuous meal only costs 1,500 green gem coins. You're in luck." As he spoke, he pretended to unconsciously stretch his stomach, revealing the tattoo on his chest and a short-handled axe on his waist. "Is your axe sharp enough? The roasted meat looks too hard. It's too taxing to put it in your mouth without cutting it." Quith spoke in a fluent Maple City dialect, which was obviously different from what Garlic Nose and the other two had delivered. The burly bartender quickly grabbed the weapon at his waist and shouted, "Boss, there's something wrong with these guys." His words came to an abrupt halt as Nalu the Ogre walked over and grabbed his throat with one hand. "Boss, there's something wrong with these guys." His words came to an abrupt halt as Nalu the Ogre walked over and grabbed his throat. The burly bartender's head and the dark table intimately made contact with each other, making a muffled sound. He wanted to take out his weapon to resist, but he was caught by Nera's empty hand. Not only is the weight not enough, the cast iron axe was not polished. There's even oil stains on the handle. As an expert in the field of weapon forging, Nera's evaluation of the weapon was concise and comprehensive. "Trash. The person who made this thing is a waste of materials. Blue is right, you guys are shameful." At this moment, Charlie's subordinates, including Weather, had all rushed over. Nalu glanced at the group of people and threw the big bartender over with one hand. The hatchet, which he called trash, immediately sank into the head of one of the minions who rushed the fastest. Red and white were always the most persuasive colors. Seeing Nalu's ferocious action, the people who wanted to rush over immediately stopped and surrounded Keys and the others. Who are they? Now that a life had been lost, the matter would definitely not end peacefully. The fat Sharon used an agility that did not match his body to grab Bulbous Nose, who was trying to sneak away, back and choked the other party's neck as he questioned sternly. Boss Chaluan, I really don't know." "Wrong person?" Charon grinned maliciously before crushing the larynx of Bulbous Nose. He threw the pissed and defecated corpse onto the ground before turning to Quess and his men. "Who are you? How dare you cause trouble here? Have you heard of Broom-Browse Dalton?" Keys asked. Hearing this familiar name, all the soft Maple City bandits looked at each other. It was obvious that they did not know the name of the boss of bosses. He was the undisputed #1 bandit who had once suppressed Charon and Weather to the point where they couldn't even raise their heads. This caused everyone to feel fear in their hearts. Sensing the timidity of his subordinates, Sharon knew that no matter what, he had to kill all of them here today. Otherwise, as long as one of them walked out, he would no longer be able to sit on the chair under his butt. Don't listen to his nonsense. Dalton and his broom brows have been taken away by the demons. They're never coming back. These foreigners are here to take over our territory. Do you understand? You are a bunch of lazy idiot. That's right. The first person to answer Sharon was not one of his subordinates, but Keyes himself. Dalton is indeed not coming back. As he spoke, he looked back at Sacred Samurai Jensen. Because that old guy is very brave, I won't touch Soft Maple City when he's here. As for you guys, you are indeed a bunch of idiot. Can't you see that Boss Chaluan, who is always yelling at you, is a monster? There was no doubt that this was Keyes' improvisation. However, he was not speaking without thinking. The so-called monster was a taboo in Ramsey, especially for humans. This word was not used to describe aliens, but to refer to some creatures created by magic by the Emperor, Madam, and the 10 Calamity Generals under their command who had once enslaved humans. Monsters were nightmares in the memories of all Ramsey people, and they were the targets that they always wanted to kill. When they walked into Karen's house, Sui Xiong and Snade simultaneously discovered that the thief leader, Sharon, was not human at all, nor was he a natural creature. Sharon had a bloodline similar to a monster, so he was obviously a creature created by evil magic. Keyes immediately became interested in this guy. He had a hunch that the finger he was looking for might be in this shabby house. I'm going to tear your stinky mouth apart. Having his secret exposed, Sharon was immediately enraged. Following his roar, the fear crows hiding on the roof all flew out and rushed towards Keyes, who was calm and unruffled. Bang! Facing the fear crows that wanted to sneak attack him, Keyes took out the whaler and pulled the trigger. At such a close distance, the bullet screen was like a fishing net that caught all the fear crows. None of them could escape. Most of the sharp-beaked killers exploded in the air, and a few lucky ones had bullet holes on their bodies. Bang! Then, Keyes appeared in front of Sharon with the whaler double-barreled short-barreled gun in his hand. He pointed it at Karen's chest and fired. The bullet shot out from the muzzle and tore the body of the thief leader apart. The powerful force pushed him out and smashed a large number of tables and chairs. But what surprised his subordinates was that even after such a fierce attack, Chaluan didn't die. His fat body wriggled a little, and an injured monster broke out of his skin. This monster was like a human-shaped crow with slippery black scaly feathers, shining eyes, and a sharp beak. He did not have wings, but 2 muscular arms and sharp claws that were as hard as rock. Elder Sharon, he's really a monster. All of a sudden, all the thieves stopped thinking about how Keyes and Snade knew this fact, because they knew that the thief leader they had once been loyal to was indeed an unforgivable monster. Although these thieves did not have any integrity or morals, the stories they had heard since they were young still had an impact on them. They all turned around and looked at the injured Sharon with vigilance. After all, he was a monster. Chapter 655. This is the Raven Man, an unnatural creature created by some primitive magic or witchcraft. Snade replied. When Sharon revealed his true appearance, the desert elf and ogre witch doctor, who had a good relationship with the steampunk half-lich, asked. Look at his true appearance, Quest said to the bandits as he reloaded the double-barreled short-barreled gun in his hand. He looks really ugly, although his original appearance isn't much better. Today was Weather's lucky day. Without any effort, he went from the second bandit leader to the first bandit leader in Soft Maple City. Kill him, we can't let him escape from here. Of course, the him Weather was referring to was not Keyes. There were priorities, and the most important thing now was to deal with the monster. Otherwise, he would not be able to be the first bandit leader. You bastards! Sharon got up from the ground, widened his yellow eyes, looked at the crowd, and announced loudly, "You will all die here today." The wound caused by Keyes' shotgun shrapnel shrunk as he roared. The bullets were squeezed out by his muscles one by one, and the injured flesh was also quickly recovering. It was clear that magic had given the creature some special abilities while giving it life. For example, rapid recovery, and the ability to leap over roofs and vault over walls. This raven man, who was about 5 feet tall, kicked hard on the ground, then stretched his arms, grabbed the beam with his claws, and flipped onto the roof. When he chose this place to build the House of Sharon, he saw that there were many shadows on the roof beams that he could hide in. While all the bandits were looking for him, Sharon had already arrived above Weather's head. "Accept your death obediently, you traitor." The Raven men were very good at launching attacks from cliffs or ceilings due to their habits since they were young. He waved his claws and jumped down from a high place, and the black scaly feathers that covered his body absorbed the sound of his movements. Just when Weather raised his sword to attack, Karen's sharp claws had already touched the skin on his neck. Hiss! Weather sucked in a breath of cold air. There were 3 bloody scratches on his neck caused by the claws. Fortunately, the Crow Man did not break his blood vessels because someone stopped the monster's rampage in time. "Stop struggling, or the power of virtue will take back all its mercy on you." Jensen gripped Karen's arm tightly, and a thick holy power gushed out from the paladin's body, locking the Raven man's body in place. "Ah!" Sharon opened his sharp beak and let out a shrill roar that resembled an eagle's. Although there was no change on the outside, he could feel that his body was being eroded by the holy power. "Lowly slave, one day Lord Soulsearch will drag your soul out and let you experience a torture 100 times more painful than what I'm going through today." He didn't speak in the dialect of Maple City, but in the common language of the underworld. This was because of Jason. Being invaded by the power of virtue, the Raven man could not hide his thoughts no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't help but use the language he was most familiar with to speak his mind, without hiding anything at all. So, as soon as he finished speaking, he regretted it. Soulsearch. Keyes heard a name, and he looked at the many bandits present. If I remember correctly, he should be one of the 10 Calamity Generals in ancient times, and he was best at playing with soul spells. According to rumors, he could take away a person's soul unknowingly and swallow it into his stomach. Seeing the sudden change in the faces of the bandits, Keyes smiled. "However, I don't think Soulsearch is a big deal. Instead of being afraid of such a guy, it's better to think about how to deal with him. After all, he's just a soul catcher that's slightly stronger. As long as we find the right expert who specializes in dealing with undead creatures, dealing with such a guy is not a big deal." Hearing Keyes say the word soul catcher, this time it was the Raven man's turn to be unhappy. As a loyal subordinate who personally dug Soulsearch out of the grave, he was no stranger to the 10 Calamity Generals. He knew that Soulsearch was indeed a powerful undead creature, as Keyes said. In fact, the reason why he came to Maple City as a spy was actually because of Soulsearch's instructions. After the Calamity Generals broke the seal, they had found the graves of other Calamity Generals and ladies, and were busy resurrecting their former companions and masters. At the same time, he also found out that the big grave where the Emperor was buried was in Maple City. Karen's purpose of lurking in this city was to intensify the hostility between the mayor of Maple City and the rebels through infiltration, instigation, suppression, corruption, and other means. It would be best to promote a war between them. In this way, the Hieronymus Temple, which was stationed at the place where the big grave was hidden, would inevitably intervene. Once the paladins of the God of Valor joined the battle, the great necropolis would be emptied of guards. Sharon would then be able to guide Soulsearch into soft Maple City, open the door to the great necropolis, and steal the emperor's coffin from within. As long as the emperor was resurrected, all the calamity generals and ladies would recover their original magic power. At that time, they could make a comeback and wipe out all the human rebels and dwarves in the Ramsey Plain to avenge the defeat of the ancient times. Soul Search promised the Raven Men that in return, the Raven Men would replace everything that the humans had now: sufficient food, advanced weapons, beautiful residences. The other monsters would also become the Raven Men's vassals and obey the Calamity Generals under their command, and those Calamity Generals would continue to serve the Emperor and ladies. At that time, the Raven Men would no longer suffer from a lack of resources. Every Raven Man mother would no longer have to carefully protect her eggs to prevent other Raven Men in the community from attacking her nest due to hunger and violence. Then, they would turn the newborn eggs and fledglings into a pool of blood or simply eat them to fill their stomach. Ramsey will restore order. The ruling chain with the Emperor and Lady as the top will ensure that everything returns to normal. Those slaves will no longer occupy the paradise that we have prepared for you. At that time, you only need to give us your faith, and we will become your gods and continue to provide you with protection. After Snade used the soul manipulation spell on him, Soul Search's words kept replaying in Karen's mind. It seemed to have a strong obsession. Chapter 656. The mayor of Soft Maple City smiled, but it was a fake smile. "You mean at the Maple Leaf Gate?" he asked in a low voice. The mercenary leader bowed elegantly. "Yes, my lord. We shot his horse and he stopped." "Then, you were almost sent here directly." The mayor looked down at Weather, the head of the thieves. He blinked and revealed a sly smile. "Is there anything else you want to say? For example, about what your horse was carrying?" There were rumors in the streets that in the mayor's office building, an entire wing of the office was filled with clerks who were busy with proofreading and updating all day long. The information sent by the mayor's meticulously organized detective agency was piled up like a small mountain. Weather did not doubt this at all, and he also discovered something else. Just now, he glanced at the balcony in the direction of the reception room, and rushed over, trying to break free from the cage. Then, he was shot by a crossbow. The arrow hit his leg, and now the hero of Soft Maple City was in so much pain that his whole body was trembling. The mayor used the hand with the gemstone ring to support his multi-layered chin. He stared at the prisoner with his small, beady eyes. "Listen, kid," he said. "You broke the contract, usurped the leadership of the legal guild, used a large amount of gemstone coins of unknown origin. I have enough reason to suspect that they are all counterfeit coins. Oh, and the dead horse is also on your head. Well, that's about it, Weather. If I were the judge, I would sentence you to death by hanging. Or you would say that I am not the judge, but I have to tell you that I appointed the judge." This was too much. "I bought the horse in a fair trade. But you used counterfeit coins, which is technically theft. I even have to question your professionalism as the head of the thieves. But those gemstone coins were genuine opal green, and those who accepted them did not question it." Opal green. The mayor pinched a gemstone coin and played with it between each of his fingers with a dexterity that did not match his short and thick fingers. "Interesting, it seems that you have made a good friend and know some new things. I thought that a guy like you would only use brown gemstone coins in your life. But, do you know? The cat's eye emerald coin is the gnome's agent. Every year, it will only be used as a subsidy for the losses of the Chamber of Commerce. It is a special currency that will only be used in large transactions." Weather opened his mouth wide, but after thinking about it, he decided that it was better to stop. So, he shut his mouth tightly. "You deserved it. Your greatest crime was to betray the master of your own city, and to show him the precious virtue of honesty. You have no morals, you have no sense of shame, you can't see reality clearly. Do you understand? Idiot." The mayor waved his hand, and the two mercenaries standing behind Weather immediately pulled out their knives. He suddenly felt something cold touch his neck. "Of course," the mayor continued, "I can also show mercy." "Go ahead," Weather quickly replied. The mayor waved his hand again, and all the mercenaries left the room, leaving only Weather and him. "Come here, you idiot," the mayor said to Weather. He did not care about the injury on his leg and the possibility that the leader of the bandits would go on a rampage. "Do you want some jellyfish with rock sugar? Do you want to eat?" Looking at the bowl of jellyfish on the short agate table in front of the mayor, Weather said, No need." "Then now I hope you listen to every word I say," the mayor said gently, "otherwise you will die. It will be a very interesting way to die, and I promise you will not die immediately. Please don't tremble like that, you are making me dizzy." "I will try my best." "Very well, as the former third bandit leader, the former second bandit leader under Old Charlie, and now the first bandit leader, Mr. Weather, you must have some connections that a decent person like me does not. For example, with the rebels outside the city, or the pirates on the sea. Where did that newcomer come from? Why did he help you get rid of Charlie? And why did he have so many cat's eye emerald coins in his possession? One question, one answer. Now, please show me your honesty." Weather nodded, but he did not answer the first and third questions. Instead, he answered the second question. "Charlie is not a human, he is a monster. He is an evil crow man who lurked in Soft Maple City as an undercover. In short, that Charlie is the lackey of the Emperor, Madam, and the 10 Calamities. As for that Mr. Keyes who came to Soft Maple City, I am not too sure about his background, but he claimed to be the person in charge of a chamber of commerce called Scales of Eternity. At the same time, this Chamber of Commerce is an organization that has been passed down since ancient times. Their mission is to hunt those unnatural monsters to ensure that the Emperor, Madam, and the 10 Calamities will not return. As for why he has so many opal emeralds in his hands, according to him, many of the chambers of commerce on the sea have been infiltrated by monsters. In the process of hunting those monsters, they destroyed a lot of merchant ships. The cat's eye emerald coins were seized from those merchant ships. Also, the reason why I bought a horse was because of Mr. Key's suggestion. He wanted to quickly take Charlie's body out of the city and burn it to prevent more people from discovering the fact that he is a monster. He did that to prevent the residents of Soft Maple City from panicking, and at the same time not to alert the enemy, so that Mr. Keyes and the others can follow the vine to find more monsters. My lord, I am sure that I am doing a good thing, whether it is for you or for me. However, this is the first time in my life that I am doing a good thing, and now I am being called a bad person. Please judge, am I not wronged?" Hearing Weather's answer, the mayor slowly breathed a sigh of relief, and he stuffed his fat body back into the high-back chair. In fact, this answer made him very satisfied. After the spy reported that Charlie, who had a cooperative relationship with him, was killed by Weather, he was a little suspicious at first, and at the same time felt that it was a pity that some of the contracts were not completed. But when he investigated further, he found that Charlie's body was not a human, but a monster, and the mayor could no longer sit still. The reason why he was able to get to where he was today was not because of how good his administrative ability was or how well he governed Soft Maple City. His power was completely based on his own reputation and the support of the Temple of St. Hieronymus. If someone found out that he might have colluded with a monster, even if he did not know that Charlie was a monster, then everything he had now would be destroyed. Moreover, the mysterious merchant who helped Weather to kill Charlie actually gave him a large amount of opal emeralds, which made him feel a little uneasy. He was worried that that person might be an agent of the dwarves. Perhaps the dwarves found out that they had neglected their administrative duties, so they sent someone to solve the problem, and coincidentally found a monster. That was why he sent mercenaries to bring Weather back, and personally interrogated him to get first-hand answers. Very good, very good. According to what you said, that group of people is a group of pirates. The mayor slyly winked at Weather, and then asked, You know, there is only one truth in Soft Maple City when it comes to the treatment of pirates, and that is that only pirates who can survive under the gallows have the right to defend themselves. Then please tell me, where is Mr. Keyes now? Hearing him say this, Weather's face suddenly changed. I am an idiot? You fat pig are the real idiot. Chapter 657. That fat pig will kill us all sooner or later. Walking on Keyes' ship, the Dock Emperor thought helplessly, and what's really sad is that before that, we still have to listen to the mayor's orders. Just for the pitiful salary, pension, and the relatively generous death benefit. Unlike all the ships he had seen before, the deck of this huge ship was very clean, and many sailors were holding brushes to wax it for maintenance. When the Dock Emperor stated his purpose, a strong orc who was 2 heads taller than him received him and asked him to wait on the deck with his men. Our boss is still eating dinner, you have to wait for a while. The orc threw out such a sentence and ignored the poor old man. He minded his own business and went to comb his pet, a terrifying dire wolf drooling at the Dock Emperor, and remove the salt crystals on its skin. After waiting for about half an hourglass, Keyes walked out from the captain's cabin at the stern. Like taking a stroll after dinner, he walked slowly to the front of the Dock Emperor. You came to inform me that the mayor invited me to the banquet. Is there anything else he wants to say to me? Did I inform you in advance? You can tell me first so that I won't be impolite. As he spoke, Zhaozhua took out a fist-sized leather bag from his waist. Neatly cut opal emerald coins were inside. Stuffing the gift into the hands of the old man opposite him, the Dock Emperor hesitated for a moment. But in the end, he used his body to block the people behind him and quickly put the leather bag into his lapel. He took a step forward and said to Quess in a low voice, Mr. Generous. At this time, the tide is low, and the wind direction is just right. In the banquet prepared by the mayor, there must be appetizing jellyfish with rock sugar. Plus, you have already eaten dinner, so I suggest you directly reject his proposal and sail away from the dock of Soft Maple City. I can solemnly assure you that due to personal reasons, the captain of the anti-smuggling unit at the docks is unable to sail out to sea to find trouble with you tonight. Thank you for your kind offer. Keyes expressed his gratitude but rejected the suggestion. As the person in charge of the scale of perpetual order, I have the obligation to establish a good relationship with the governors of every trading city. Even if there was a small misunderstanding, I believed that my persuasion would be enough to deal with it. You see, didn't I just convince you? As he joked, Keyes turned to look at the beastman who was serving the direwolf. Fazak, Brock and the rest have other matters to attend to tonight. Bring a few of your men and follow me to meet the mayor. Remember, dress neatly and don't lose your manners. The tradition of our Chamber of Commerce is to dress people in formal attire. Yes, my lord. Upon hearing Keyes' order, the orc Fazak immediately stood up and kicked his left leg with his right leg. I'll have the brats prepare the clothes and the mount. I won't be impolite, and I'll convince them with reason. Yes, the reason he spoke of was actually the reason of physics. Seeing this situation, the Dock Emperor, who knew that he was not persuasive enough, did not say anything more. He immediately bid farewell to Keyes. Then, he led the group of people behind him down the huge ship. He didn't want to stay on the ship for even a second longer. He kept feeling that the ship was like a living giant beast, as if it could swallow him whole at any time. On the road to the mayor's residence, there were 2 groups of mercenaries riding horses accompanying them. However, because there was a pack of direwolves beside them, the horses' calves would always cramp, and from time to time, they would involuntarily fall behind the group. Regarding this situation, the orc-wolf riders of the Fazak family were somewhat disdainful. However, with Keyes present, none of them dared to ridicule the other party. They only clamped the direwolf's saddle tightly and followed closely behind the big boss, who was riding the winterwolf as a bodyguard. The pack of direwolves whistled through the street. Even if they did not have chews in their mouths, they did not make a single sound. The leading winterwolf did not have the slightest bit of arrogance. It very obediently maintained a steady pace, trying its best not to let the passengers on its back feel any bump. In a very short time, they had arrived at the mayor's residence. Because the mayor did not trust the garrison, this residence was now completely protected by the private armed forces hired by the mayor. When the guards saw the dire wolf riders galloping towards them, they almost did not sound the alarm. Fortunately, the mercenaries riding behind them used fireworks to signal their companions to stop their reckless behavior in time, so they did not make a fool out of themselves. "Sir, please come this way." When Keys dismounted from the winterwolf, the mercenary leader personally came over to lead the way. At first, they were a little worried about how to get the group of strong orcs to disarm, but when they arrived at their destination, Keys only needed to give them a look, and the Fazak family's wolf riders took the initiative to hang their weapons on the direwolves' saddles. After passing through 2 corridors, Keys was escorted by the mercenary leader and the orc guards to the mayor's guest hall. Sure enough, the mayor, who had been waiting for a long time, was unable to endure the hunger and was now minding his own business and enjoying the dinner on the table. In addition to the mayor, the current number 1 bandit of Soft Maple City was also in this guest hall. However, his leg was wrapped in gauze, and he had a crutch under his arm. It seemed that his body was not in good condition. "Mr. Keys, this is the mayor's own decision. It has nothing to do with me." Seeing Keys walk in, Weather immediately said loudly, "He wants to define you as the leader of the pirates, and then use the gallows to judge you." "Oh, okay. This has nothing to do with you, I understand. Now, please shut your mouth." Hearing Weather's loyalty, Keys nodded and ignored the group of hostile mercenaries behind him. "This is between me and the mayor. It's best for me to talk to him personally." Then, just like before on the ship, Keys took out a leather bag. However, this belt was twice the size of the one given to the Dock Emperor. He opened the belt of the leather bag and threw it on the short agate table in front of the mayor. The cat's eye emerald coins inside rolled out. "You want to bribe me?" The mayor stopped eating and put his favorite jellyfish aside. He picked up a gem coin from the table and said to Keys in surprise, "With this money, you want to bribe a decent person like me? Mr. Pirate, I'm afraid you don't know, but Soft Maple City has a tradition. When it comes to pirates, we only abide by one truth. Whatever you may say, you must wait until you walk down from the gallows alive before you make a plea." Rumble! A thunderous explosion suddenly rang out, interrupting the mayor's long speech. At the same time, a wall in the reception hall of his official residence was blown to pieces. The round cannonball was embedded in a marble column, and spiderweb-like cracks were densely surrounding the cannonball. "For truth, I have a different opinion." Keys showed a harmless expression and smiled at the mayor, who was about to hide under the short agate table. "That is, truth only exists within the range of cannons." Chapter 658. If faith was also a need, then it must also follow the basic principle of need. People would only believe in what they needed the most. The largest temple in Soft Maple City was the mortal residence of the god of valor, Herones. Standing on the square of the temple at the top of the protruding promontory, one could overlook the entire city of Soft Maple City. As Herones taught, be ready to take action at all times. There were at least 50 paladins stationed in the temple all year round. So when the deafening sound of cannons rang out and Soft Maple City was bombarded, the paladins immediately picked up their weapons and equipment, riding on the blessed warhorses of the celestial bloodline, and galloped from the temple to the mayor's residence as reinforcements. The leader of the group was a tall, middle-aged paladin with bronze skin, long auburn hair, and amber eyes. He was wearing half-body plate armor while riding on horseback. A long sword was tied to his waist, and he held the flag of the Hierony's temple in his hand. Captain Dalton, the scout who went to investigate the situation in the city, inquired about the news and then returned to report, "The location of the firing seems to be near the harbor breakwater. Except for the mayor's residence, no one is injured or damaged." Hearing this news, the Paladin leader nodded and ordered the other team members in a sonorous voice, "Honor is the greatest reward for eliminating evil, and virtue is the principle of the path of Hierony's. Where we are needed the most, we will plant the flag of the Hand of Lightning there. Now, everyone, let's go to the mayor's residence first. For the glory of Hierony's. The Hand of Lightning, never fear." Accompanied by the loud chanting of the holy name, all the paladins and their mounts were surrounded by a white halo. This was the gods' recognition of their actions. With the blessing of the holy power, their energy would become more abundant, and their bodies would not feel tired easily. The horses' hooves hit the ground like rain, making a clatter, clatter, clatter sound. Passing through the streets and alleys, the paladins arrived at the mayor's residence that was shelled not long ago. However, there was no such thing as they had imagined. There were only a few people who looked like mercenaries standing at the gate, smoking and chatting, just like ordinary street gangsters. What about the attackers? Dalton jumped down from his horse, drew his sword from its scabbard, and walked straight to the mercenaries. "Calm down, warrior Hieronymus of the temple." Seeing the Saint Samurai coming with a long sword, some of the mercenaries immediately stepped out and put their hands in front of their chests to make a gesture of rejection, telling Dalton and the others not to be so impulsive. "It's fine inside, at least there's no problem now." Just now, a big merchant was showing off his new weapon to the mayor's warriors, and now they are waiting for you inside. Without using camp detection and lie detection, it was easy to run into a few rotten people in this city full of filth. Dalton was afraid that after seeing a few red names, he couldn't help but stab his sword directly into the opponent's stomach and intestines. "Lead the way. We want to confirm the mayor's condition personally," he said coldly. Compared to wasting his breath on these mercenaries, Dalton was more inclined to use his own eyes to verify the truth of the incident. If the other party was lying, or was in cahoots with evil, then the paladins he brought would naturally use the weapons in their hands to solve the problem. The official residence was not too big. After bypassing 2 corridors, they came to the mayor's reception hall. As soon as he entered the door, Dalton saw a few orc guards. Although most of these creatures had nothing to do with kindness and order, Dalton didn't do anything because they didn't have any weapons in their hands. He just asked the paladins under his command to be vigilant. Dear little Dalton, seeing the leader of the paladins coming in, the mayor sitting in his seat immediately stood up and then looked at Keys very warmly. "This is Mr. Keys from the Scale of Perpetual Order. We just bought food for Soft Maple City's weapons and negotiated a big deal. Now that you are here, our conversation can get to the point." "The point?" "That's right." Without waiting for the mayor to answer, Keys glanced at the paladin who came in and said with a smile, "Next, we are going to talk about serious matters that are closely related to the fate of all humans in Ramsey and the safety of the lives and property of Soft Maple City's residents." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and Fazak, who was standing behind him, came over with a wooden box and gently placed it on the ground. Facing the paladin who came forward, he slowly opened the lid of the box. Seeing this move, Dalton had already ignited a shield made of holy power. But when he saw what was inside the wooden box, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. "A monster's head! Where did you find this? How did this raven man get into the city?" Facing the son of an old friend, which was a bit strange, after all, in terms of age, little Dalton was actually much older than Keys. Keys patiently explained, "The mayor has just said that we are from the Scale of Perpetual Order. But that's just one of our side jobs. Our main job is actually to guard the tombs. This is an organization with a very long history, so long that there are no records of it in the history books to this day. and the content of our job is to ensure that the Emperor, his wife, and the 10 calamities under their command do not climb out of their tombs. However, due to the negligence of some of our companions, a calamity general named Soul Search was still found by the group of monsters. They dug him out and resurrected him. Now they are trying to dig out the other calamities, the Emperor and his wife, from their tombs. This Raven Man was an undercover agent they sent to Soft Maple City, and his identity was disguised as the head of the thieves, Sharon. We tracked down his whereabouts and carried out a targeted elimination. We also found out his purpose in coming to Soft Maple City: to find the Emperor's tomb sealed under the Temple of Hieronymus and take the opportunity to steal the Emperor's coffin. So, I have been waiting for you, the warriors of Hieronymus, to come, because I sincerely hope that I can cooperate with you and kick those old monsters who climbed out of their tombs back to where they came from. Looking at Paladin Dalton, who was deep in thought, Keyes continued, I have reached an agreement with the mayor, and he is willing to support our cause. He glanced at the mayor, who nodded desperately. Now I need to discuss with you. But before that, please allow me to return something I obtained from other channels to its true owner. As he spoke, Keyes took out another wooden box from his robe. Compared with the previous one, this box was very small and did not seem to contain anything. But the moment Keyes took it out, all the paladins present let out a soft gasp. On the box there was a layer of sacred power that they felt very familiar with, and they could feel that this power was even purer than the gift that Hieronymus gave them. Seeing Keyes handing the box to him, Paladin Dalton hurriedly stretched out his hands and respectfully took it. Inject your sacred power into it, and you can remove the seal on the box. Just as he was told, he separated a trace of his sacred power and injected it into the wooden box. The lock on the box opened automatically with a click. Dalton lifted the lid and saw what was inside. A crumpled, blood-stained hat lay in the corner. The person who entrusted this box to me, like you, is also a powerful paladin. He told me that your father had saved his life. The great power of order will not give up on saving every lost soul. Chapter 659. Soul Search was always hiding behind a mask, wrapped in a large robe. Not a single Raven Man knew what he or she looked like. A few fellows who couldn't hold back their curiosity had long been blown into meat jerky by the wind, and then turned into the dinner of all the Crow men. Now there was probably no trace of their existence in the cesspool. Ha! Accompanied by a series of terrifying laughter, Soul Search stood in front of several Crow men leaders. They were all Sharon's brothers from the same nest. Soul Search's voice sometimes sounded like a man who ruled the world and looked down on the kings, and sometimes it sounded like a female bartender in a tavern who was chatting and laughing with the guests. However, this time, his voice was very familiar to the Crow men leaders. It was Sharon's voice when he spoke. I'm very sorry. Soul Search looked around at the crowd. There was a hole in the mouth of the mask on his face, and the voice came out from it. Sharon can no longer continue our business, let us mourn for him. All the leaders of the Raven Men remained silent, but it was not because they were sad. In fact, even though they were brothers from the same nest, the relationship between the Raven Men was not that harmonious. Sharon had grown strong and hurt his brothers more than once. The reason why these people were silent was because they felt fear. Soul Search had promised them that if someone did not complete their mission, then even after they died, Soul Search would not let their soul go. Sharon's undercover was exposed, and now Soul Search might have pulled his soul back and swallowed it into the terrible mouth hidden behind the pale mask. After chewing, tearing, and swallowing, the soul would become one with the mouth, never to be reincarnated. However, the silence of the Crow men leaders did not last long. Today, Soul Search summoned them, not to mourn for a useless person who failed to complete his mission. He had his own arrangements, and he needed the cooperation of the Crow men leaders to complete it. You don't have to be afraid, at least not now. As he spoke, Soul Search reached out his hand and gently patted the hand of the nearest crowman leader. "The reason why I called you here today is that 2 more old friends are about to join our cause, and they will cooperate with us in the operation tonight. Incarnation, Leopard Man, come out and let everyone know." Hearing Soul Search's words, the few leaders of the evil crowmen were shocked, and then they all revealed joyful expressions. The name that Soul Search had just mentioned was none other than Zhejiang, who was also loyal to the Emperor and his wife. According to the legends of the evil crowmen, they were allies of the Soul Search team. This also explained why the Soul Search had only revived the 2 of them even though they had found the other Calamity generals. 2 humanoid creatures, one tall and one short, one fat and one thin, walked out of the walls of the cave side by side, as if the walls were not made of mud and rocks but illusions. Seeing this, the few leaders of the evil crowmen glanced at each other, and then knelt on the ground to pay their respects to the 2 new generals. The Incarnation was the tall and fat one. He was as tall as a house, and as wide as half a house. He was wearing an oversized red mage robe. However, due to the passage of time and being bitten by insects and rats, this originally luxurious robe was now in tatters. He staggered as he walked, and his pace was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, as if he could fall at any time. Messy and sticky gray hair was tangled around his head, and the gray beard was thick and dense and stained with many stains. It almost completely covered his face. In his big, pale hand with brown spots there was a stick. The shape of that thing was like an elongated female body. Every detail was perfect, but unfortunately, the seductive beauty was tainted by that dirty hand. It was said that in ancient times, the stick was originally a living woman. Unfortunately, because she betrayed the Incarnation, she suffered the crazy revenge of the Incarnation and was made into a staff that would never betray its master again. The short and thin one was Leopard Man compared to the Incarnation's Frankenstein replica. Leopard Man's appearance was undoubtedly much more normal. However, as he walked, his form was constantly changing. One moment, he looked like a normal man, and the next moment, he turned into a humanoid Black Panther. When he was in the form of a Black Panther, Leopard Man had black fur and a thick, round, and long tail. And under this fur, there was a strong body hidden. His nose was a bit like a cat's, with a special organ called the pericluder, which could distinguish smell information that many creatures could not detect. The tip of each of his fingers could instantly pop out a long razor-like nail. Because of the soft pads on his feet, Leopard Man walked quietly. If he wanted to deliberately hide, then as long as he hid behind the Incarnation, none of the crowmen leaders present could find him. The only strange thing about the Leopard Man was that his waist always seemed to be wrapped in an apron made of rags. But that was just an illusion. If one looked closely, they would find that those rags were actually poisonous snakes that were pretending to be asleep. The Incarnation is the best doctor, and Leopard Man is the best assaulter, Soul Search announced his order loudly as he looked at the crowmen leaders who were lying on the ground and trembling. I want all of you to obey their command tonight. Divide into 2 groups and attack the Temple of Herones. Leopard Man will be responsible for leading the paladins and priests away, and the Incarnation will go down with you to the tomb of the Emperor. With him, it will only take a little effort to bring the Emperor back. Perhaps it was because they had just been resurrected, the Incarnation and Leopard Man seemed to have not recovered their normal ability to speak. However, both of them began to vent their excitement in their own ways after learning about Soul Search's plan to resurrect the Emperor. The Incarnation swung the naked staff in her hand and knocked it directly on the stone wall of the cave, making a dull thud. The Leopard Man was so excited that he somersaulted on the spot. When the leaders of the Raven Men heard this order, they wanted to persuade Soul Search to find a more suitable time instead of forcibly breaking through the Temple of Hierones and breaking into the tomb by force. However, the voice of Soul Search resounded in the minds of these monsters before their own voices could be heard. Sharon has been exposed, we have to go all out. At any cost, I must usher in the Emperor's awakening. Chapter 660. Narrow, single entrance, easy to defend and hard to attack. Nehru, who was disguised as a brawny man, said to the mayor of Soft Maple City seriously. Narrow, single entrance, easy to defend and hard to attack. After repeating the new security consultant's request, the mayor slapped his forehead and pointed to a building outside the window. Paper Tower, the environment there meets your requirement. Very well, let's go. The orcs of the Fezzik family were fully armed. They carried the new weapon, samples that Nehru brought from the ship, and the group of mercenaries hired by the mayor. They surrounded the mayor of Soft Maple City and quickly moved to the new residence. The so-called Paper Tower was actually a library in the mayor's official residence. Its appearance was similar to an ordinary watchtower. It was completely built with limestone mixed with glutinous rice juice. There was only a circle of stairs around the tower that connected each floor of the tower. The purpose of this tower was to store books about the history of Soft Maple City and the administrative orders issued by the previous mayors. However, due to the mayor's size, he rarely came to the Paper Tower. Most of the time, he worked in other places in the official residence. The Paper Tower had a total of 7 floors, and each floor was about the same size. With the help of the mercenary leader, the mayor took a while to climb to the top floor. At this time, the orcs and Nehru had been waiting for a long time. They were arranging the security. Leave a team on this floor, Nehru said to the mercenary leader who climbed up. You can distribute the rest of the people evenly to each floor, or you can directly gather everyone in the front hall at the bottom floor of the Paper Tower. Remember to let them wear armor. Staring at the dark staircase, the mercenary leader narrowed his eyes. It looks quite tricky. However, the experience from years of battle allowed him to judge that Nehru's words made sense. Halberd team, form a defensive formation at the bottom floor. Lower the tip of the spear. Crossbowmen, follow and stay 4 or 5 steps away. If there's any movement, shoot. Everyone, draw your swords and don't let them leave your hand. Just when everyone was cautious and orderly about the security measures for the mayor's safety, something suddenly climbed up the battlements of the mayor's official residence. Its eyes were blood red, and its 4 feet were on the ground. It was as dark as the night. After transforming into a black panther, the Panther Man's movements were as smooth as flowing water. He walked down the stairs along the battlements, entered the courtyard, and finally disappeared into the night. After a while, the people in the Paper Tower heard a soft scraping sound coming from the place where they were before they moved, the mayor's original residence. Crackling, sizzling, sizzling, it was very light and shallow, but it did exist. Apart from Nalu and the few Fezzik orcs, everyone felt the tide of fear rising. It was about to drown their hearts. If one were to use their current consciousness as an analogy, the most appropriate one would be frightened monkeys. They wanted to quickly find a tree to climb, screaming, and throwing feces and rotten fruits everywhere. The few women who came with the mayor, as well as their servants, had even covered their mouths with their hands, afraid that they would scream out of nervousness. Scream if you're scared. It's okay. Looking at the pale-faced little girl, the only daughter of the mayor, the burly ogre grinned and lit the wall lamp. Anyway, the monster is there. No matter how we hide, he will definitely find us in a while. If he dares to come, we'll kill him. Not knowing if Nalu's smile was too scary, or if she really couldn't hold it in, the little girl let out a sharp scream. Nalu and the few orcs laughed. They succeeded in diluting the atmosphere of fear. Because of Nalu's suggestion, the mercenary leader only left 1 or 2 people on the top floor. He himself was responsible for guarding the stairs on each floor with a few good men. The rest of the mercenaries were gathered in the hall on the ground floor. According to what was said before, the mercenaries on the ground floor had already formed a formation. If they really couldn't defeat the incoming monster, Then they would retreat to the next floor in an orderly manner. There would be people responsible for receiving them on each floor. The halberds were in a tight formation, facing the door of the paper tower, like a hedgehog with steel needles standing upside down. The archers were hiding behind them. In order to prevent accidentally shooting at their teammates, they were now pointing the arrows at the ground. Suddenly, there was a roar and the sound of the door being scratched. The Panther Man had found the mayor's hiding place. This ancient calamity general that had been revived not long ago vented all his anger on the iron door made of fir wood. Accompanied by continuous banging sounds, the door of the paper tower seemed to have been hit by a battering ram, quickly breaking open a large hole. Seeing the shadow outside the door flash, the crossbowman immediately aimed at the hole and pulled the trigger. The crossbow strings rang out, and the arrows flew out with whooshing sounds. The noise outside the door came to an abrupt end. Just when someone thought that the monster had been killed, there was a sudden roar outside the door, as if mocking the mercenaries for their useless efforts. What was worse was that this roar seemed to have a soul-stirring effect, affecting the crossbowmen. A few people's hands trembled, and they accidentally shot the crossbow into the halberds blocking in front of them. "Damn it, what are you doing?" The injured mercenaries loudly cursed, but they didn't notice that the door of the paper tower had suddenly opened. Something suddenly flew over the forest of spears. It was as black as the essence of the night, and as fast as sudden death. The guards only had time to think, so fast. The Panther Man had already landed in the crowd, and the mercenaries screamed, scattered, and got in each other's way. The monster roared, and its sharp teeth and claws were too fast to be seen with the naked eye. Some people felt that they had hit the shadow, but then they were thrown more than 10 feet away. The mercenaries who were able to survive, those who were not injured or had minor injuries, began to desperately flee to the next floor. Those who were heavily injured but not immediately dead leaned against the pillars or walls with their weapons, waiting for the monsters to cut open their stomach. In just a few seconds, 6 or 7 of the full halberds had died, and the number of injured was even more. They couldn't even slow down the Panther Man's speed, let alone injure or stop it. Too fast, the monster is too fast. Under the protection of a few men, the mercenary leader retreated to the top floor, and then he immediately completely blocked the door of this floor with the hardwood bookcase. Quickly find something to block the damn window. If the monster can climb the wall and get in through the window, we're all dead. Not knowing if it was because his skin was too dark, his words came true. When they were ready to find something heavy to block the window, a shadow suddenly appeared outside the window. "The monster is there, everyone be careful." Bang! Not knowing when, Nalu pressed the button in his hand, and the electromagnetic induction switch was instantly triggered. The new weapon they brought from the ship suddenly showed its power. Shotgun shells shot out from the window and hit the Panther Man who wanted to jump into the room. The monster clung to the wall and used the strength of its muscles to offset the impact of the shells. However, before he could get in, there was a light pada sound. The small cannon that Nalu had placed in a good position was activated again. The scatter shot was fired again, and the pellets hit the leopard man's head again. If there's anything that can't be solved with one shot, then do it twice. After saying this, Nalu also put on the spiked gloves. Roar! With a roar that almost shook everyone on this floor, the ogre suddenly returned to his original size. Then he began to rush to the window, and directly turned the top floor of the paper tower into a balcony. This time, Nalu directly grabbed the neck of the Panther Man, who came back and pressed the general straight to the ground. Bang! The Panther Man suffered a hard landing, and Nalu stepped on his body, so it was a soft landing. If 2 cannons can't deal with him, then I'll reward him with 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. While counting, Lu's fists were like a pile driver, hitting Leopard Man's face again and again, covering the floor with the head of this general of calamity. Chapter 661. Only Lord Leopardman is allowed to assassinate the mayor. Will he have any accidents? Standing beside Soul Search, a leader of the Crowmen reminded him in a low voice. Tribulation will never die. Soul Search ignored him. Instead, the Incarnation answered his doubts with a deep voice. At most, he will be chained. Hearing this, the leader of the Crowmen tactfully shut his mouth. Okay. After staring at the protrusion for a long time, Soul Search suddenly issued an order. Leopard Man has sneaked into the mayor's residence. He will complete his own hunt. What we have to do now is to take advantage of the commotion he caused to raid the Hieronymus Temple and bring back the Emperor's coffin. If possible, Incarnation, you are responsible for waking up the Emperor directly. The Incarnation nodded. If he wanted to wake up the Emperor, he had to make a lot of preparations. Not only did he have to have a good body, but he also had to have enough mental energy. Let's go. Accompanied by Soul Search's whisper, the Crowmen who had been waiting for a long time quickly ran to the foot of the protrusion. They did not walk on the stone path up the mountain. Instead, they jumped over a rock and then began to climb up the cliff. For birds, acrophobia must be a terminal illness. The Incarnation, who arrived at the foot of the mountain at the same time as Soul Search, looked up at the Crowmen who were climbing up and suddenly recited a poem. Soul Search ignored him and directly summoned a gust of wind to help him ascend higher into the sky. Seeing this, the Incarnation could not help but shrug his shoulders. In the end, you still don't want to give me a ride. He gently tapped the toe of the beauty's body staff on his shoulder. A pair of wings instantly grew behind the Incarnation's back. He shook his body and felt that it was not enough, so he simply completely transformed into a seagull. Flapping his wings, the Incarnation caught up with Soul Search and finally reached the peak of the protrusion first. Don't enter the temple, Soul Search's words rang in the ears of all the Crowmen, and he warned this helper again. The Emperor's tomb is under the obelisk in the square. Move that building directly, and then you can go down to the tomb of the Emperor. Just as the Crowmen were about to move the obelisk with their tools, there were suddenly a few air-piercing sounds in the distance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several flaming arrows directly hit the torches that had been set up in the square. Holding a two-handed greatsword, Dalton appeared with more than 50 Saint Samurai around the Crowman and the two generals. Evil destroying slash. A total of 50 rays of light gushed out from the weapons of the Saint Samurai. They formed teams of 2s and 3s and began to fight with the Crowmen. And as the leader of the Saint Samurai, Dalton went straight to the leader of the other side. Your Soul Search. Without answering Dalton's question, Soul Search spoke to his avatar in a voice that the other Crowmen had never heard before. Leave this place to me, you go and welcome the Emperor back. Madam. Upon hearing Soul Search's words, the avatar was shocked. He looked at his Calamity General colleague in surprise before walking towards the obelisk without looking back. A sword light flashed in the oblique stab. Dalton stepped on the ground with his feet and stabbed at the Incarnation with a long sword. However, just as he was about to succeed, a dark force suddenly attacked, forcing him to swing his sword to block it. Soul Search's figure was like a ghost as he quickly wrapped around the body of the Saint Samurai leader. Although the body of this Calamity General seemed to be real, every time Dalton swung his sword down, the long sword in his hand could smoothly pass through the body as if it was cutting air. It seems that this guy is an undead creature in the form of a ghost. Then, Hironi's purification light. After identifying the race of the other party, the Saint Samurai immediately summoned the opposing divine power, wanting to inflict serious damage on Soul Search. However, after the destructive light spread out from his sword, it still only passed through the body of the other party without causing any damage. Moreover, what puzzled Dalton even more was that since he could not hurt Soul Search, why didn't the other party use this opportunity to attack? Soul Search had only turned into a shadow to tangle with him. It couldn't be that he was reluctant to do it because he was handsome, could it? However, it didn't take long for him to understand Soul Search's intention. This Calamity General tangled with Dalton for a while, then suddenly moved away from him. Threads made up of some kind of power that Dalton could not identify had been connected to all parts of his body, and the other end of these threads was in the palm of Soul Search's hand. In the center of his open palm, there was a big mouth that sent chills down one's spine. The threads were all sucked into this mouth. Soul Connection Technique. Living Puppet. Soul Search's palm moved, and the Saint Samurai leader involuntarily let go of the long sword he was holding. Immediately after, under the control of Soul Search, Dalton staggered in another direction with crooked steps. "Leader, what's wrong with you?" A Saint Samurai noticed Dalton's abnormality and hurried over to help. But before he could get close, Dalton actually raised his fist and punched him in the face. Not only that, Dalton actually used his own body to crash into his long sword. Seeing this situation, the Saint Samurai could only retreat and stand in the distance, looking anxiously at their leader. He tried many ways to save Dalton, including using Exorcism Slash and Chaos Slash on those weird azure threads, and attacking Soul Search. The former did not have any effect at all, and the latter made him become Soul Search's plaything. Ha 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 ha! Sharp and presumptuous laughter came out of Soul Search's mouth, and this Calamity General looked at the group of Saint Samurai disdainfully. Stupid slaves bound by faith. After the return of the Emperor, you will be his first breakfast. After saying this, Soul Search's body turned into a wisp of smoke and shot toward those Saint Samurai who were killing the crowmen. The weird azure threads, like weeds, kept gushing out of his palm, trapping them one by one in the same way. However, just when he thought he was about to win, a bright light suddenly lit up on the lighthouse next to the temple. The light was so majestic and holy that wherever it shone, evil monsters like the Raven Man would be greatly affected. The sticky feathers on their bodies were all dried and then ignited by the light, wailing and begging for the forgiveness of that existence. Lighthouse of Herones, I will raise you to the ground. Soul Search forcibly controlled two crow men to create a shadow for himself, and he cursed fiercely. The reason why he wanted to take it slow before, instead of risking everything to attack this temple, was actually because he was afraid of the God of Valor's backup plan in order to seal the Emperor. Although he was proud, he was not arrogant enough to think that he could fight against the gods. Avatar, you must act quickly. I'm already trying my best to buy time. Seeing that the Raven Man that blocked the light for him had been burned to ashes, Soul Search secretly hoped in his heart as he captured a few more Raven Men to serve him. Only the Emperor, only he can fight against the gods. Chapter 662. The Lord has passed away, and I am the Emperor. In the tomb buried deep in the ground, the soft moaning kept repeating and had been going on for tens of thousands of years. Moreover, he could last even longer because he was one of the most stubborn creatures in the multiverse. The Emperor was a wandering demon's burrow, or rather, he used to be a wandering demon's burrow. The so-called demon's burrows were the workers and maintainers of the machinery realm. They were the most loyal subordinates of the Singularity Lord. Their existence symbolized absolute order and law. All the demon's burrows were born in the central energy pool of the machinery realm, Regulus. They were the perfect combination of machinery and flesh. The difference in ability was reflected in the difference in appearance, and appearance determined their class. Although the demon's burrows could eat anything and needed to breathe and sleep like normal creatures, the metabolic process of their bodies was definitely different from that of ordinary creatures. Because of the way they were born, they did not need gender or age. If the parts were old, they would go to the central energy pool for repair. If they were completely damaged, they would be happy to end their lives. Other than being loyal to the Singularity Lord, the demon's burrows did not have the concept of mercy, but at the same time, they were not vicious. Most of the time, they judged the priority of their actions based on logic and not on moral principles. However, even in the machinery realm, things were usually not so perfect. Some demons' burrows betrayed absolute order, left the demons' burrow society, and began to wander the world. No one knew why the demons' burrows began to wander. Perhaps it was because they were hot-headed and burned the circuit board. Perhaps they hated the unpalatable food in the machinery realm. Perhaps it was because they simply wanted to see the world. However, their behavior was unforgivable for the high-level demons' burrows. This could cause other demons' burrows to follow suit, which posed a great threat to the stability and order of the demons' burrow society. Therefore, most of the demons' burrow wanderers were hunted down by the demons' burrow army, at least before the Singularity Lord disappeared. The Singularity Lord was a powerful god. At the same time, he was also the demons' burrow and the Strachan. In order to give order an advantage against chaos, he had once created a singularity stone and threw it into the sea of chaos. The majestic power of order on the stone had indeed played a role, creating creatures with similar appearances and social classes in the chaos ocean, the Strat Toad. Although the Slartoans belonged to the chaotic evil faction and tried their best to deny and hide the relationship between their race and the Singularity Lord, the Singularity Lord was the race creator who launched an expedition to the Chaos Sea every 289 years and had never intervened in the struggle between the Demon Grave and the Slartoans. Therefore, even if some people suspected that he had died because of Demon Lord Orca's final words, the people of Demon Grave still believed that the ruler would return and did their best to prepare for his return. Under such circumstances, the priority of hunting down the wandering demonic grave was pushed down from the top of the mission list. Furthermore, some demonic graves suggested that they needed to leave the machinery realm alone for a period of time in order to study how to reincarnate the Singularity Lord. This originally deviant idea was actually included in the evaluation of high-ranking demonic graves, and some feasible plans were actually authorized to be carried out. And the Emperor was one of those authorized, legal, wandering demonic graves. He proposed an idea, and this idea was based on two reasonable hypotheses. First, evolution was the basic law of order, and the number of fleshly life forms in the multiverse was much higher than other forms of life. Then, would the new Singularity Lord be born in the form of pure flesh and blood? Second, would an ordinary demonic grave be able to become a new Singularity Lord by making up for the characteristics that they lacked? The other high-ranking demonic graves, after careful logic and analysis, assessed that his idea was indeed possible. Therefore, they authorized the Emperor to leave the machinery realm and conduct independent research without endangering the existing social order of the demonic graves. Through countless research experiments, the Emperor used up all the resources he had brought from the central energy pool and finally completed the transformation of himself, turning himself into a pure flesh and blood creature. And this was also the basis for him to make up for the characteristics that the demonic graves lacked. Ordinary demonic graves only required two things: to maintain order and to be loyal to the Singularity Lord. After becoming a flesh and blood creature, the Emperor had more needs: self-awareness, wonderful companions, loyal subordinates, supreme authority. Therefore, he changed his name from a string of efficient identification numbers to Emperor, which was full of a sense of power. Therefore, according to his own ideas, he created a wife for himself that could accompany him. Therefore, he gave the knowledge he had learned during his years of wandering to 10 apprentices and created the 10 generals of calamity. Therefore, he kidnapped a large number of mortals and brought them to the world of Ramsey to build his own empire from nothing. When all of this was satisfied, he actually had a bold idea. Since the Singularity Lord was already dead, why should he be welcomed back? The Emperor, which was him, was the only choice for the demonic graves to be loyal to in the future. As a demonic grave, he naturally knew the deep heritage of the demonic graves in the machinery realm. Therefore, he could only secretly accumulate strength and develop the Ramsey Empire, hoping that one day he could command the machinery realm and occupy the central energy pool of Regulus. However, he didn't know if the Singularity Lord knew about this in the underworld and punished this unworthy descendant, or if fate had played a huge joke on him. The Emperor, who was conscientious and tireless and worked hard to achieve his goals, was betrayed. The humans who should have obediently obeyed his rule and worked hard to achieve a higher position in the class chain he had set up actually rebelled. Moreover, this rebellion had the support of the dwarves living in the underground world and the gods of various paths. Outnumbered, the Emperor, his wife, and the 10 generals of Calamity were defeated by the rebels one by one, and the Ramsey Empire's nearly 1,000 years of rule came to an end. Although the Emperor's self-transformation ensured that the gods couldn't easily kill him, even if a saint appeared in the final battle, they could only choose to seal the Emperor, bury him deep underground, and guard him strictly. The Emperor's wife and the 10 generals of Calamity also enjoyed the same treatment and were sealed in various parts of the world of Ramsey. However, humans were always forgetful. After thousands of years, the seal began to age and the management began to slip up. Even the guards who were originally responsible for guarding the seal had relaxed their vigilance. Therefore, Soul Search was rescued by the ravens and successfully resurrected. And now, the Emperor was about to open his eyes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.